to begin with the presentations. To begin with, sir, we'll start with Dr. Sesikeran sir's presentation. Okay.
Do you have a
Yeah, it is there on the
slide,
email, right?
You have the slides?
Yeah.
Yes. So this will be the position.
And even Vasant
slides.
was
Yeah, I'll stay. Before the slides come on, let me thank Janaki for the kind introduction and Moderator for inviting me, and thank you, sir, for your good initiative. I think we are now living in a time when we're trying desperately to bring down this huge pandemic of diabetes, heart disease, and hypertension, and many more. And as was mentioned earlier by Namrata, the numbers are huge in our country. And we also find that for every one diabetic, there are about 10 pre-diabetics waiting to become diabetics in a matter of time. And if you project the healthcare requirements of the diabetics, when 10 to 15 years down the line they develop complications like acute kidney disease, renal failure, or cerebrovascular disease or cardiovascular disease, where do we have that level of infrastructure available to manage this? So prevention is the only way that we can manage, and prevention is through our lifestyles. Lifestyle, there are two major components. One is the food that we eat, and the other is our physical activity. And both have to run in parallel. We cannot say that since I am eating a healthy food, I can sit and watch television and then stay healthy. Or the other way around, that people go to the gym and do everything and then go and eat in restaurants all the wrong kind of food and still say that they must be healthy. So it is a combination of several factors. Among them, one of the initiatives is, of course, is to bring down the glucose load in people through the food that we eat, and then GI is one such thing. And can you project the slide?
Yes, I think Namrata is arranging.
So the glycemic index, of course, is something most of you know, because since you have this product has come out of that research. It is the extent to which a known quantity of food, when you give it, how much does it raise your blood sugar level? And the blood sugar level is calculated using different time points as fasting, 1 hour, 2 hour, and so on, and therefore you get a curve. And when you calculate the entire area under the curve, that becomes your measure of how good or how not so good your food is. So you consider glucose or even white bread as the one which will raise your area under the curve the maximum. And then compare it with whatever food you have. It could be rice, it could be wheat, it could be vegetable or a whole meal, and see what's the difference in the two curves. And depending on that, we categorize foods into high glycemic, those which raise it almost to 70% of what glucose does, and those which are raised to around 50-55% or so, which is moderate or low GI, and between 55 and then 59 will be the moderate levels of food. And then based on that, we categorize food as low GI, high GI, or mid GI, and the product which you have been referring to comes under the low GI category. We also have the issue that when a person becomes a diabetic, as Dr. Vasant will know, that you tell them that stop eating rice. Okay? Eating rice or eating wheat is a behavioral issue. You can't overnight change your food, however ill you are. And I've tried many a time telling people that no, you tell a North Indian that you should cut down on his sweets, it's very difficult. Actually, a South Indian that you reduce your rice intake, he will reduce the rice intake but start eating idli and dosa. The rice still finds its way through that. So that way it is becoming very, very difficult for us to manage the dietary habits of people. Let me see, I have the presentation.
2 minutes.
Yeah, take your time. Yeah. I wanted to just save time.
Yes, sir.
So what I have for today's presentation is I reviewed a lot of literature. And in fact, by anybody invites me to give a talk, it actually gives me an opportunity to learn. Each time you give a talk, I have to read and update because what I did 10 years back is all outdated. Things are different. Yeah, can I have the next one? Yeah, so this, as I already mentioned, is a measure of blood glucose. Blood glucose raising potential of the carbohydrate. Our foods are made up of a combination of carbohydrate, proteins, vitamins, etc. Of which the carbohydrate component is the one which raises our blood sugar. Okay? So therefore the carbohydrate foods are therefore classified into high, mid or low. Next. Taking glucose as the reference standard.
No, it's unopened.
Yeah. So this is the curve I was telling you. If a food raises the glucose only by this level, you calculate the area under this curve, and then you calculate the area under that curve, then this becomes a high GI food, and this is a low GI, and that's another graph which shows that you could have something in between the two. The whole idea is that if you eat more of the low GI food, the probability is that your glucose levels will be lower than what it should be. Otherwise. Next please. Now the GI, how does a food become high GI or low GI? It's because of what it contains. Okay? If your food has got more of sugars, easily digestible sugar like glucose or fructose, okay? Now let us say ice cream or a dessert, it contains a lot of sugar in that, then it becomes a high GI food. The moment you eat that, your sugar will start shooting up. If a food has got complex carbohydrates, in the sense that you've got carbohydrate, but it is mixed with a lot of fiber, that when you eat that, the digestion is much slower. So such slowly digestible carbohydrates will categorize a food either into a moderate GI or as a even high GI sometimes. But foods which have got complex carbohydrates will digest very, very slowly, will come under the low GI category. It's not just the fiber, as will come later on, it also the quality of the carbohydrate itself will decide whether it will get digested faster or whether digested slower. Next slide. Now, how we know the calculation of GI of rice, but do we eat only rice? We eat a whole lot of other things, isn't it? Will that GI of rice change the GI of the whole meal? It won't. So you have to calculate the GI of the meal. The simplest way of calculating a GI of the meal is to calculate the individual GIs of the components of the meal. Okay, let's say there is chicken or there is a dal or something. Each one GI you calculate and total it. But research shows that when you do that kind of calculation, you are likely to overestimate the GI to almost 22 to 50%. So if you want to know a food's whole GI, you have to take the entire food, digest it, and then process it, and then you have to calculate. Next please. Now, what actually predicts the GI value of a particular food? One of the components is the fiber content. Okay? So the plasma glucose was found to be higher following the consumption. So they did a simple study where they gave a high GI food with low fiber content, and another group got a low GI food with high fiber content. Okay? And they found classically, as expected, the high GI food which had low fiber had a higher glycemic load. Because it had very little fiber, it was more carbohydrate, so the sugar went up. But when they did the same experiment, both the high GI and the low GI, with same amount of fiber, the GI values were equal, more or less equal, which means it's not just the GI value of the carbohydrate, but also how much fiber is present in our food which decides our ultimate GI. So this is how we'll actually, as dietitians, we have to plan our meal for the diabetic. Next one. Now here's an example. Now you have your wonderful low GI rice. I make a pongal, a sweet pongal. Recently we had in Sankranti, all of us would have eaten. A sweet pongal with low GI rice with sugar and jaggery. Will it raise the sugar or not? It will. Even though your rice is good, the whole meal is not good. But if you eat a low GI rice with dal and non-starchy vegetable, it will maintain the blood glucose. So what actually means is GI of not a single component, but of the whole food which matters. It is also unfortunate that ethnicity of a population also decides whether for the same kind of food which we eat our GI will go up or not. Next please. They found that if you give the same food to a white skinned chap and to an Asian, same food, the area under curve will be more for Asians. We unfortunately as a race seem to have all sorts of disadvantages. We have smaller kidneys, a smaller heart, smaller coronary arteries, earlier onset of diabetes, increased waist circumference. Everything seems to be a negative for us as Asian. Probably over the years of deprivation our genes got reprogrammed. Next please. So there you have another index, what you call the glycemic load. The glycemic load is the GI of the food multiplied by the amount of carbohydrate in the food, okay, divided by 100. So a glycemic load is high if it is more than, value is more than 20, it's intermediate 11 and 19, and low with if it is less than 10. Now, a good example is the GI of watermelon, which all of us is not very healthy, and the GI of a donut, which we all enjoy, but it is high glycemic. Both have GI values of 80, which is high GI, including watermelon. But if you check the glycemic load for one serving of watermelon versus one serving of a donut, there the difference comes. The GI of watermelon is 8. The reason is 100 grams of watermelon will have only 8 grams of carbohydrates and 92 grams of water and fiber. So, does the GI value actually predict the food whether it's good or bad? It doesn't. You have to now multiply the GI with the amount of carbohydrate and the amount you eat, and only then you will know which is the right number. Next. Now coming to diabetes. Whether low GI foods will actually improve the overall glucose control in diabetes, because that is your ultimate intention, isn't it? We have low GI food, we want to know will it help a diabetic or not. A large meta-analysis of several studies put together showed that it improved short-term as well as long-term control of a value called HbA1c. I think you're all familiar with the HbA1c. It's an average value over a 3-month period, which most of us as diabetics get ourselves tested. And if the A1c is around 6.5 or 6 in a diabetic, we are happy, saying that at least last 3 months, everything is good. But does it really predict that we are safe, that we are not likely to get into trouble? You'll see later on that actually it does not. Next. So therefore, well-controlled studies are needed to assess whether the use of low GI in GL actually help in long-term problem diabetes. Diabetes is never a problem when it actually occurs. Most of us feel that there's nothing wrong, I'm absolutely fine and I'm doing everything. But 15-20 years after diabetes, that is when slowly you realize that the urinary protein is going up, so your kidney is starting to pack up, or you get suddenly you get a heart attack, or you get a paralytic stroke, or you get a non-healing ulcer in your foot and therefore lands up in trouble. So the complications of diabetes are slow and silent, and they are dependent on how well we controlled our glucose during that period of 10 to 15 years, not whether we controlled it today or just for a few days. Next. So this is of course a hypothetical situation. Suppose you have a high GI food, also has a high GL and low fiber, obviously sugar will go very high. If it's a low GI food, low GL and high fiber, that's the best. In between you have a spectrum of various things, both with GL and GI combination, and therefore we have to understand this. Sometimes a low GI food but has a high glucose load and as low in fiber will still raise our blood glucose, even though the original starting point is a low GI food. Next, please. Now, what are the factors which can lower the GI of our meal? Okay, even let us say I have high GI material, fiber. You eat your cereals which are potentially high GI with lots of fruits, vegetables and whole grains, your GI will be lower. Fat in the food will lower our GI. That is probably why traditionally we always added ghee in our food.
Yes.
No. So what fat does is it delays the emptying time of the stomach and therefore the digestion slows down and the area that comes down. This comparison, you see, if we eat pasta with cheese, the area under the curve comes down by 58% than eating pasta alone. Or if you eat a toast with cheese, the area under the curve comes down by 30%. I'm not recommending we should eat cheese and butter and all that. So instead you should add good fats like polyunsaturated fat, use oil seeds, or even eating an oily fish along with your rice will bring down the GI of the rice. And whatever I am telling is not my wisdom, but is what is published in the literature, and I have also given these sources. The factors that lower glycemic response, that is the extent of glucose going up, it also includes protein. If your food has got protein, for example, instead of eating rice, you were to eat a chicken fried rice or an egg rice, the GI of the rice will be lesser because of the protein present in that. Okay? And then vinegar, they found that if you have vinegar in your diet, it lowers the GI. In fact, apple cider vinegar was very popular for people to lose weight and lower sugar because vinegar again delays gastric emptying and it also interferes with the digestive enzymes. You may feel uncomfortable because food is not fully digested, but at least your sugar won't go up. Next. Now starch, I told you all of that the fiber content decides, but not only the fiber, the amount of starch in the food also decides the glycemicity. You have starch which is resistant to digestion. In fact, my friend from CFTRI will know better than me in terms of resistant starch in carbohydrates. You have a resistance RS1 which is physically inaccessible. That means the starch inside the grain is not accessible to the digestive enzymes when we eat because it is covered by fiber. That is why we say whole grains and partially milled grains are much better than highly polished grains. You also have ungelatinized resistant starch granules. It has got starch, but it is not in a digestible state. For example, a raw potato starch, green bananas, high amylose corn starch. So the same high amylose corn starch, you can process it and make it into high fructose corn syrup and then it hits the roof, the glucose, right? So the foods are good. The way we process it makes them bad. Then you also have a retrograde starch or cooled gelatinized starch. This is, if you cook a potato, you cool a bread or rice if you keep it in a refrigerator and take it out the next day and heat it and eat it, its digestibility comes down. This again goes back to our traditional wisdom of sadhanam or padaya sadham, where they used to put the cooked rice in cold water and keep it overnight and eat it next day with curd or buttermilk, was healthier. We thought it was all trash, but now we realize it's because once you cool it, the starch becomes less digestible and therefore the GI value comes down. And you also have chemically modified starch by using various food technologies. You can bring down the GI. Next, please. So the general rule is any processing technique which modifies the original structure of the grain and exposes its starch to digestion will automatically increase the GI. That's one we say that the more processed the food, the more bad it is for us in terms of glucose. So the ultra processed food therefore is something which we are not supposed to use. Then, this is actually a reference. Next please. Now coming to millets, of course our millet expert is here. We always talk about millets is a better option than the other cereals. But this is a study run by my colleague in NIM, Dr. Bhaskarachari, They studied a whole lot. They did what's called in vitro glycemic index. They looked at ragi. Ragi we know is good. You see the glycemic index of ragi, is it low? It is not. It is actually high. But you look at the glycemic load is less than 20. The reason is ragi has digestible starch, but it also has got a whole lot of fiber. And you see the one which is high glycemic load is ragi halwa. Obviously because we are using sugar in that. Next please. So managing diabetics through diet is no single food can be used as an index of safe food. From what I said, it is to be an entire food, the quantity of food, how often do you eat, what you drink. I can eat a high GI food and have a bottle of Coke, and then there goes my glycemic index again. So there is a comprehensive strategy. Okay? And now we have the advantage of continuous glucose monitoring. You know how many of you have seen a continuous glucose monitor? You just stick it on your arm, and then for 15 days with your mobile phone you can read out your glucose going up. Advantage is they found that in an untreated diabetic, what happens is each time they eat the food, the sugar goes up and down. These are called as peaks. And there is a danger zone, and normal zone, and hypoglycemic zone. We don't want the peaks to hit this danger zone, even if your A1C value is normal. It is found that each time these peaks go up, our organ damage takes place. We may have normal A1C, but still you may develop diabetic complications because you have been eating in such a sporadic manner that each time it is shooting up, coming down, then you are okay for some time, again it goes up and down. So these peak measurements are now possible with this CGM. So the best of course is you see a A1C is normal range, but the peaks are there. Average is normal. There you see the A1C in the same range, but the peaks are within the normal. So diabetics who manage their blood sugar in that range can live with diabetes for the rest of their life like even normal people because they don't develop the complications. Next please. So this is another one. This is by Mohan and group from Chennai. Here they have calculated that all Indian foods, whole foods, and given a quality score. Now based on the quality score, we can choose the foods and the combination of foods to get the best benefit. Next please. Thank you.
Dr. Malleshi. We will have the question answers after all the sessions.
Every time we keep on theory.
No, I didn't.
So Hyderabad final
Yeah,
round.
yeah.
Stop. There's only one more presentation.
Two, Dr. Malleshi and Dr. Vasant.
And both of them. So another 115 minutes. After that, we just spend the time with the neighbor, find out the way to organize the slides.
For the discussion.
For the discussion. So we accept the
After presentations, we need to go to the check. So what I suggested
Some years back we came and we visited your place. Swarnalata's husband also was there.
they should send it before that.
Sir, please. Now we request Dr. Malleshi to begin his speech.
So it's not for speakers, it's for recording.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So everyone namaskara. Very good afternoon to everybody. It is privileged to hear Dr. Sesikeran, and most of the things what I wanted to present, he has already done. Very easy. Okay, I am happy to be associated with Sreshta biotechnologists, and I enjoy working with them, and hopefully I will contribute my might for development of low GI foods which the industry will success.
It's like the wedding thing for the camera. The cameraman will hold that.
Put in your pockets.
Fine. Okay. As all of us know, food carbohydrates are important dietary components. It comes in the form of cereals, fruits and vegetables, not in most of the animal products. Okay, almost all other dietary patterns what you consume has carbohydrates. And these carbohydrates, we have studied in the pre-university and subsequently that they are free sugars, as Dr. Sesikeran also mentioned. We have monosaccharides like glucose, fructose, galactose. Normally, glucose, fructose are more prominent, galactose in the lactose and other food carbohydrates. And we have disaccharides, maltose, lactose, sucrose and other kinds of things. And also trisaccharide, which is raffinose. Then we have oligosaccharides. This trisaccharide is also combined with normally oligosaccharides because they are flatulence producing carbohydrates. We do not have enzyme to digest those things. That's why Bengal gram, when you consume, we produce more gas because the oligosaccharides are not digested and they go into the gut and where they get fermented and a lot of gas is produced. Then we have polysaccharides. Most of our diet contains polysaccharides. And polysaccharides, we have starch as the main carbohydrate component, and the other one is non-starchy polysaccharides, what are nothing but dietary fibers, what my earlier speaker also highlighted very clearly. Okay, now next slide please. Okay, this has been explained what is GI and all. Okay, and see the factors influencing the digestibility of the carbohydrates. Other things we are not touching here, we are more concentrated on the carbohydrates. This is one thing very important. Dr. Sesikeran also mentioned about this amylose. Starch is made up of amylose and amylopectin. These are and they are complexed actually. And the food which contains more amylose, normally on cooking doesn't swell much because it has, amylose is a straight chain component with 1,4, 1,4, 1,4, 1,4, 1,4 units, whereas amylopectin is branched chain. See, like this, like a tree branches, no? It is branched, and this amylose and amylopectin presence in the carbohydrates makes lot of difference as far as digestibility is concerned. Normally, I will show you subsequently, the food material which contains more amylose is slow digested, and the food material which contains more amylose, especially if you take the rice, for example, we have normal indica rice and we have waxy rice. Waxy rice is like japonica rice. Japonica rice, when you cook it becomes sticky. It swells much because it contains low amylose, so a lot of branches which are there, they again combine and they ooze out also when you go on cooking it. The amylose comes out. When the amylose comes out, it becomes more sticky rice. Okay, but we Indians normally prefer indica high amylose rice. Most of our rice samples contain 20 plus amylose, and maximum is around 26, not more than that, because when you go to rice breeders, including our Rice Research Institute in Hyderabad, they are least bothered about enhancing the amylose content in the rice. They say our interest is more on breeding aspect, insect resistance, than this and all. Nowadays, probably they are taking little more interest, and that's how the diabetic rice has come out of these things. Normally, high amylose rice are slowly digesting. and high amylopectin, I will tell you later subsequently, amylopectin which has got branch, it is more crystalline in structure, and amylose is more amorphous. More amorphous means if it is cooked extensively, it oozes out. So always rice, they say don't cook too much, especially rice biryani, you all know, no? Normally we add, I will come to that, we add little oil during biryani making, and that oil surface or the liquid surface combines with amylose and it reduces its digestibility. That's why biryani is generally slow digested compared to other things. And similarly, parboiling of the rice, as you all know, which is we are heating the paddy, cooking the paddy basically. So it is in the cell of seed coat. So it is not allowing it to expand. So stop at that stage. So it gets cooked, and when it is cooled subsequently or when it is dried subsequently, the amylose undergoes a phenomenon known as retrogradation, which Dr. Sesikeran also mentioned. I will explain about this retrogradation. And because of that retrogradation, the amylose complexing with other ingredients of the rice like little bit protein and lipid occurs, and its swelling is reduced. And subsequently, when swelling is reduced, the starch granules are not fizzing out when you cook it. So the alpha amylase or beta amylase or enzymes what we have in this in our gut, no, it will not be able to digest it very rapidly. If the rice granule swells, I have some slides. When it swells, no, it's very easy for the enzyme to attack it and disintegrate it and the production of sugar. I don't have starch, but if you take ragi starch and rice starch, if we add amylase to that under semi-cooked conditions, in case of ragi starch, the surface erosion takes place. Whereas in case of rice starch, the enzyme attacks randomly and digests it very rapidly. Because the complexing of amylose and amylopectin in some of the millet starches is so complex that it will not allow the enzyme to randomly attack it and digest it. That's why normally we call it as a complex carbohydrates, and this complex carbohydrate is not only caused by the complexing of amylose and amylopectin, also where the starch granules are covered with protein matrix, dietary fiber matrix and lipid granules, and so on and so forth. Okay, then coming to the other important aspect for the dietary digestion of thing is lipid. As Dr. mentioned, if the food contains more oil, then it is slow digested normally. The reason for that is oil, as you know, are triglycerides. When oil is digested, you do not produce carbohydrate directly. But what happens if the lipid is there? Lipid, as you know, is a lower molecular weight component compared to our starch or proteins. So the lipid smears over the starch granules. When it smears over the starch granules, it prevents the enzyme to directly to penetrate and digest the starch. So that's why the lipid content, higher the lipid content, then it's normally slow digested, or we call it as a heavy food normally. And nowadays that is made use, and coconut oil, normally virgin coconut oil is added to the rice during cooking, and that rice is slow digested. It has been documented and published nowadays. Okay, similarly, protein. Protein, as you know, is one of the very important building blocks which contains amino acids and all. And as far as the glycemic response is concerned, protein doesn't have a major role to play. But if the protein is in the form of a granular covering, like a cell, then it also helps in slow digestion. Because the proteins are digested by proteases. Starch is digested by amylases. For the amylase to get into the starch and digest and produce maltose XYZ, the protein matrix has to be removed. which normally does in the stomach, peptine and pepsin and other kinds of things. So if the protein is say for example gluten, wheat gluten, which is a surface covering, then that also reduces the carbohydrate digestibility. Then phytic acid is one of the anti-nutritional factors. So this phytic acid directly doesn't have any role in the thing, but phytic acid, because of the phytase, has some roles of inhibiting the enzymes. Amylase inhibitors, for example. So when the enzymes inhibit their action in the stomach or in the gut, then naturally the carbohydrate digestibility is slowed down. That's why alpha amylase blockers, doctors know it better, because most of our medicines also, which if you want slow release of carbohydrates, they have something which reduces the activity of the amylases or the digestive enzymes. Then dietary fiber, I will explain about it, and similarly resistant starch, which is also one of the important, and doctor explained it very nicely. Okay. Then the external factors, these are all internal in the grain or in the food material we have. But the kind of cooking what you do also has influence on the digestibility of the carbohydrates. Then kind of processing, I will talk about that. Then retrogradation is nothing but a kind of resistant starch formation. Then even they say soaking the rice in water and then cooking has some influence on the digestibility. Then germination, then modification of starch by physical and chemical means has a lot of influence on the digestibility. Give me water. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I change slide?
No, you can go back a little bit more processing. I'll talk. Okay, cooking, as you all know, is nothing but the starch granules. I have one slide, I will explain later also. Starch granules are in the compact form. Okay, they are sometimes covered with lipid globules, proteins, XYZ, and dietary fiber, which is a cell wall material. Okay, then when we start cooking the food, initially normally soak the material in the water, it gets hydrated, and after hydration, when you start cooking, the starch granules start getting swelling, or it's known as the process of gelatinization. So the degree of gelatinization has lot of effect on the digestibility. So some saying is that if you overcook the rice and consume, it becomes poison. I don't know, some old saying is there. So don't overcook the rice. You should be able to chew it little bit. Then that's better, not simply gulping. Okay. Then as far as processing is concerned, our cereals are not ready to eat. Pulses are not ready to eat. They are protein and starch component. So we need to process them to make it ready to cook or ready to eat. So processing normally is milling. Okay, but only milled grain we can't eat it. We have to cook them subsequently. So if we overmill the rice or as a matter of fact other grains, then we are dividing the fibrates content, which is a rich source of dietary fiber in case of these food grains. So brown rice is always better than completely milled rice. Similarly, brown millets and XYZ. So when you process or mill it, we should judiciously mill. In fact, Government of India earlier had made a rule that you should only polish rice for 4%, means only 4% of the bran you should remove. But it has a drawback of poor shelf life. More the protein and the grain, it gets infested and sometimes become rancid. So people were buying ration rice and they were repolishing and using it. But always less polished rice, because 100% brown rice is very difficult to cook. It's difficult to eat also. It's more chewy. It doesn't allow it to swell. And if you overcook it, it splits and the amylose comes out. So then another kind of processing we normally find is kind of roasting the grains also. But simply roasting will not allow us to eat. It also slightly reduces the swelling because it prevents oozing out of amylose during cooking. and development of aroma too. Then other kind of processing we have is ready to eat, or for example extrusion cooking. Lot of snacks we have got nowadays, extrusion cooking. That extrusion cooking, also the popping of the grains, that's also one of the method of making it ready to eat. Just like popped ragi, popcorn, XYZ and all. So during this popping, the starch granules gets burst. It will not in the form of granule, and the protein matrix or fiber matrix, what is covering that, gets completely ruptured. So sometimes by extrusion cooking or popping, we are enhancing the soluble fiber content to some extent. And because the starch granule is completely ruptured, that amylose, amylopectin, this thing complex we have, it is completely removed. So because of that, the food becomes highly digestible. So our extrusion cooked or popped or other kinds of cooked methods are normally having high digestibility. Extrusion cooking normally enhances the digestibility. Similarly, if you go for germination or malting, which during germination normally amylases which are helpful in the digestion are synthesized or elaborated, or their activity increases. And because of that, if we do not destroy the enzymes and if we take that material in the powder form and cook it, the starch completely gets hydrolyzed and it becomes thinning down. Instead of making bulk on cooking, it becomes thin. So the nutrient density increases and the digestibility increases. That's why our germinated things normally we prefer to give to children, growing children, malted ragi or what ragi, whatever you call it as. Whereas the germinated grains are not recommended, doctors will agree with me, not to diabetic patients because the sugar production is much higher. And lot of nutritional changes takes place. Vitamin synthesis, mineral bioavailability, reduction of anti-nutritional factors, all those happen during germination. That's why sprouted legumes or germinated grains are very, very important. And one more thing, probably doctor will agree with me, the gamma aminobutyric acid. It is synthesized during germination of grains, especially the brown rice. That's why in Japan they are eating a lot of brown rice, germinated brown rice. So that is one of the methods of processing which enhances the GABA, and at the same time, doctor, they say it has a low GI also, GABA rice. So that is one thing we should promote in India also, germinated brown rice, which is known as a GABA rice. Then retrogradation, I will come back to that, and modification of the starch by physical and chemical means. When you expand, when you cook it, it modifies, changes its composition. Next slide please. Next. Okay, factors influencing the glycemic index, doctor has covered, but something one, as I mentioned, the structure of the granules. If it is loosely compacted, then it digests faster. And during cooking, something oozes out, amylose, lot of ganji, what you call it, no, it happens. Then physical entrapment. Okay, the granules are entrapped by something, by physical or compact, hard grain and soft grain we have seen, no? Hard grain where the granules are highly compact. Similarly, viscosity. Viscosity is the one normally in the kind of slurry or ganji or porridge, viscosity. Thinner the viscosity, it is easily digested. Thicker is slow digested. That's why grain digestion is slower than forage. Forage, even ragi forage also is digested quite rapidly. Okay, then dietary fiber, I will talk about that, cooking methods. Then nature as well as degree of processing, I will mention, presence of anti-nutritional factors, especially phytate and tannins, and tannins or polyphenols are normally known as enzyme inhibitors. So if their content is high, for example, if you take betel nut, the moment you put in the mouth, no, you feel astringence. The saliva production probably stops there. Whereas if you take a rice flakes and start consuming within 2 minutes, you feel sweetness. Okay, so if the tannins or polyphenols are high, then digestibility is reduced. Probably that's why betel nut eating after heavy food, right? Our ancestors might have suggested. Okay, whether it's a grain form, flour form, or whatever it is, grain form is always digested slowly compared to the flour-based product, but not in the case of chapati or roti. In case of chapati or roti, is better than cooked rice because when you make dough with cold water or hot water and bake, no, all the starch granules are not swollen to the extent it is possible in chapati. Whereas in case of rice, it is swollen. That's why chapati is rather slow digesting compared to rice. Okay, then nature of the accompaniment. This is one of the very important things which most of us are missing. In our earlier traditional food, especially in North Karnataka and Southern Maharashtra and area, always the plate had lot of chutneys. Flaxseed, then different kind of yellow, X, Y, Z and all. Accompanied, and sometimes green leafy vegetables and other chutneys. So these chutneys, which are accompaniments, have lot of influence on the carbohydrate digestibility, including vinegar, which doctor mentioned. See, our pickles contain vinegar, so that reduces the digestibility. So always, even MDR, they are repeatedly telling, we should have a kind of chutney along with rice. If you put 1 or 2 spoons, no, it should bring down. Especially, Doctor, this seaweeds in Japan. If normally they sprinkle seaweeds on rice and consume, without that they never consume the rice. So this one, we should also probably make some accompaniments. They should add to the rice and they consume it, which will certainly reduce the GI. Next slide, please. So, coming back to how to reduce the glycemic index or digest carbohydrate digestibility, basically is number one, enhancing the resistant starch. I will come to that. Then addition of enzyme inhibitors, as I mentioned, polyphenols and other things, or alpha amylase blockers, XYZ. Then addition of coconut oil, which is a recent thing. Especially virgin coconut oil, they say during cooking only, not prior to cooking. If you add 1 spoon, about 3% they say. Oil, if you add and then cook, that oil smears the rice and prevents its overswelling and splitting. And as a result, its digestibility is slowed down, but not much investigation is done in that direction, but these are the observations people have made. Then, because one thing is with coconut oil, it has lot of medium and short chain fatty acids compared to other oils. So it is very easy to penetrate into the grain, whereas the other oil may not penetrate. That could be one of the reasons why it's suggested. Then addition of these fenugreek flakes, which is becoming very, very popular. Now de-bittered fenugreek flakes are available. It's a very good source of soluble dietary fiber and also very good source of protein also. So one can make chutney out of this also and give as an accompaniment fenugreek flakes, which will be very, very helpful. Then because fenugreek flake contains so much protein, fat, and basically soluble dietary fiber content is around 25% in fenugreek flakes. It's always slimy, you might have seen. Even the fenugreek, if you soak water and start biting, sliminess is there. So this is one of the very, very important aspect. Although it has equal amount of insoluble fiber, but the soluble fiber is the one which has got lot of health benefits, especially even in the gut portion also. It ferments and it produces bile acids which reduce the cholesterol formation. That's what I understand. Okay, then one more thing is nowadays nutritional yeast is recommended. It's also an edible thing. It is sweeter also. So this too contains protein and lot of fiber. So similarly, wheat germ is also one of the very, very important additive to the food. They are not the main foods. Especially when you want to develop diabetic food or some slow digesting food or low GI foods, addition of these things, we can go up to 25% of the soluble fiber, not beyond that. Per day consumption is normally 25%, and these are not food items, they are only additives. So we can go up to 25%. And one more thing, inulin, chicory, in coffee we take. That is a prebiotic, not a probiotic. So it helps in the gut to produce desirable components after fermentation by the microorganisms. Next, sir. Okay, the retrogradation, the term we have been repeatedly hearing. Retrogradation is nothing but reorganization of amylose in the cooked food or in the processed food. Simply milling will not change the retrogradation. But the moment you add water and cook the starchy material, as we all know, the long chain amylose coils and in between lipid granules globules enter there, and because of that lipid and amylose complex that resists the amylase for the digestion. So that is nothing but the retrogradation. This retrogradation is number one, oil addition or the oil content in the food. The other important of retrogradation is which we can practice, as doctor also mentioned, the cooking and storage. But if we cook the material, starchy material, immediately cool it, practically in that technology, bring it to the sub-zero temperature, leave there for about 8 to 10 hours, then again cook. Then again, if you do 3 replication of this cooking and cooling cycle, then we increase the resistant starch considerably. Resistant starch is the one which is not digested in the system, only in the gut that gets partially hydrolyzed and you get bile acids XYZ and all. It acts as a prebiotic. It's a soluble fiber, nothing but resistant starch. So if we increase the resistant starch, it becomes resistant to amylase digestion. So in bread also retrogradation, stale bread, but that becomes not suitable for eating. But rice, by heating and cooling cycles, it is possible to reduce the digestibility or the GI of, but it's a tedious process. In fact, we had made one technology that parboil the rice, then immediately cool it, then again heat and cool it. Technologically it did not work much because the industry wants quick money, as you want. They were tons and tons of parboiled rice they were putting, and because of that, that cooling effect was not at all observed. The rice started getting fermented actually. So, but this is a practical way of preparation of this. And one more interesting thing I would like to say here is, if we do this heat-cool cycles of sorghum and bajra, then interestingly its shelf life increases. It will never get rancidity. And also it becomes like quick cooking rice. So we can explore that technology to make some products out of that. Okay, then complexing of the starch, as you mentioned, amylose lipid complexing. The rate of digestion of amylase lipid complex is less than digestion of the amylose. Fine, next step. Okay, then this is resistant starch, as you had mentioned. The starch which is not digested is nothing but resistant starch. That's all. Next slide, please. Okay, these are how to increase the resistant starch in a particular kind of food. More on rice, basically. Okay, number one, genetic modification which is not fully successful still. They are trying to increase the amylose content, but not very seriously. Okay, then enzymic debranching. As I had mentioned, this some little work is in this. See, as I told, amylopectin is like this, branches. So if I cut these branches, then it becomes a straight line compound, which is nothing but amylose. As I mentioned, amylose is slow digesting, amylose coils, amylose forms resistant starch by debranching enzyme, which is known as pullulase enzyme. By exposing the rice to pullulase enzyme, we can cut off the branches and increase the straight line amylose, because the branch also becomes like amylose, basically. So we can enhance the resistant starch. Then hydrothermal treatment, as we discussed now, cooking and cooling, especially sub-zero cooling. Okay, then this high hydrostatic pressure of recent development, by hydrostatic pressure, you are debranching, you are reducing the branch and increasing the amylose content. Then chemical modifications is done again by treating the starch and reducing the branches. Okay, Then gamma irradiation also to some extent, but it's not very practical because again irradiation is one its own drawbacks. Then lipid complexation. Then microwave cooking they say is better for retrogradation than other kind of cooking. Probably now retard pouch, microwave assisted retard pouch products are coming into the market that may be having probably lower GI. Then cooking food grains in limited quantity of water. Probably in our pressure cooker this is being practiced, unlike the traditional cooking. Then I told you cooking and cooling cycles which has got. Then food consuming pattern rich in this is one thing, something interesting I noticed, probably the doctors agree with me. You first contain food which is containing more fiber. That's what they say, when you are hungry eat more fruit, not rice. Then fat containing food, then protein containing. Carbohydrate should come at the end, but normally you don't practice it, but that's what they say, it is helpful actually. Prevention and management of postprandial hyperglycemia. Next slide please. Okay, this is what Dr.
Sir,
explained, then you need to
yes.
repeat it. Right, next.
Time, a little bit quickly.
Finish almost. Okay, yeah.
It's very
So-
interesting for many of
We have
us.
to hold a quiz
Actually,
after
it's
this.
very.
Okay, this all of you know the glycemic index of different foods. Next one. Okay, so this is a bit science of this is a starch granule. See, this is amylose, and this is amylopectin line. This is how the granules are arranged, and these are the granules. Especially, next slide I tell you, interesting aspect you see. Okay, see, this is like a rice starch. Small, big, assorted, different shape and size. But in some cases, they are very much structured granules. When they are structured granules, otherwise some granules they compact and it's known as ghost granules. In ragi you find a lot of ghost granules. That's why the complex carbohydrates and slow digesting. Next one please. Okay, this is the cooking pattern or known as pasting pattern. Okay, when you take the rice starch or any starch, when you start heating, when it attains gelatinization temperature, suddenly the viscosity increases. And you see the granules is losing its texture. And finally, it reassociates. That is nothing but retrogradation, gelling aspect. Next please. Okay, this is pulse starch. Cereal starches will increase like this, decrease and again increase because breakdown is higher in case of cereal starch. But in case of pulse starch, the breakdown is very, very low. So, if we use pulse starch which is a byproduct of protein isolation by air classification, then that can be a good candidate for development of low GI food products. Next please. Okay, this is amylose and amylopectin, amorphous portion and crystalline portion. Okay, so it gets ruptured during cooking. Next slide please. Okay, so this is just for discussion, doctor. They say so much calories should come from fat, and when I calculate, it comes to be around 60 gram fat consumption per day, which normally we don't do it. I don't know whether it's practical, not practical.
More,
Right.
sir.
Carbohydrate calories we consume regularly. Protein also maybe around 60 gram protein, but around 65 gram fat consumption as per this International Diabetic Association recommendation is very difficult. Right, next. Okay, parboiling as I mentioned enhances the retrogradation, prevents swelling of starch. So in the process, lot of vitamins and minerals from the surface they get into the grain and oil comes out. So because of that, parboiled rice, if is semi-polished, it's a good candidate for slow digesting carbohydrates. Okay, then this is nothing but texturization. We modify the texture of the starch in case of pasta, which is a cold extrusion. You don't allow it to swell. Whereas in case of extrusion cooking, you allow it to swell.
Right.
So that's why pasta has got a lower GI compared to extrusion cooked. Next, sir. I think dietary fiber, as you all know, it is soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. Most of the millets have got high fiber, and the food which contains more fiber in the endosperm is better than the food which contains only on the surface mass. Next please. Yeah, way forward, as I mentioned earlier, if we can make a khichdi-like product, whereas parboiled ingredients and legumes, if you make a balanced thing, probably that will be a good food, low GI foods. And low GI rice analogs we can make by extrusion cooking, whereas we can increase the amylose content as well as the dietary fiber in there. Then instant mixes using low digesting carbohydrates as main things, we can develop low GI foods. Cooking in acidic medium also is lower than alkaline medium, because alkaline swells the granules. It's like gelatinized starch if you do. In fact, alkali test is one thing which helps in understanding the degree of cooking of the product. Then this is, as you know, slightly unripe foods are better. I think this is the last slide. Thank you for your patient sharing.
So we have a quiz now.
We all have to refer the
Yes.
yes. The food science has always been a challenge, sir, and you have made like literally, you know, the slides and the topics which you have presented shows your vast work in CFTRI. Otherwise, it would not have been possible for you to tell about carbohydrates so much. Because I know, I mean, like how much I struggled when I was working on soluble fiber. My entire PhD of 5 years was on a soluble kondagogo. Every time I used to estimate fiber, next day the result used to be something different.
True.
Because I was using the dietary fiber method, and the soluble fiber had more than 50% fiber. So I mean, I am enjoying every bit of it. It's only because of the time constraints we had to discuss. I mean, it is really overwhelming, sir. Thank you so much.
I had a few questions.
Later, bit later. We'll all have together.
Yeah.
Okay. Now it's a pleasure to invite.
Yes, I will forward it.
Slides are here, sir. On the wall, sir.
Yeah. Can I start?
Yes, sir. Please.
Before the panel discussion, we need some gap.
Good afternoon,
Above.
everyone, all the beautiful ladies here, wonderful men here. And it was great listening to.
So you
It was
didn't
great
hear?
listening to two doyens.
Yeah.
For me, it was a learning experience. I'm sure you all have enjoyed. You know, I always say being nutritionist, you're an important part of the healthcare system. Now, the reason is you're concentrating more on the prevention as well as managing a patient. Patient can have many problems. When I was listening to Sir and also to Mr. Malleshi, so what we all have to realize is, okay, low GI food is important, food with less glycemic load is important, food with fiber is important. What about the other ingredients in that? Does it have healthy fat? Does it have good protein? And you are not just managing diabetes alone. You want to give him a good quality of life, longer life, is it not? You are looking at his lipids, you are looking at his body weight, you are looking at the longevity of the person. So that's where I think I also learned. When you said all that, it's important that you are looking generally. And finally, one point I want to tell all of you is that listening to patient is one of the most important tasks for the nutrition and for the doctor even for more. Because many times, listen to me, most of the patients are wiser than us.
Nowadays, especially.
And I will tell you one more point. Today I was also telling, especially if your patient is illiterate, we should not use the word illiterate.
Yeah.
They have more wisdom.
Yeah. Yes.
Somehow they have more wisdom.
Yes.
Today I had one person, 75-year-old village lady, she said she did not go to school. But very confident, she came on a wheelchair. My colleague also was there. And she's talking to me so wisely and even advising me on certain issues. And while going profusely thanking me. So I always tell my younger colleagues, don't ever underestimate people with less education and people who are rural based. like you said about the diet, the grandmother's diet, so many things about the fiber, all that I wanted. I don't know why Janaki wanted me to speak on a different topic. Probably she thought this man is going around the country speaking always on diabetes.
Because
Anyway, can I have the next slide, sir? And you have the liberty to change the slides if I'm taking longer time, because I know time is constrained. It's all in your hands. So what's important is now we are talking about endocrine disrupting chemicals. These can be natural as well as these can be artificial. Many times they are artificial. We made them. We made them to make our lives better, we thought, but they're eventually killing us. That is what always happens when we have certain short-term selfish gains, as we are all. So you all know that human body requires a lot of hormones, and endocrine system is the system which has several such endocrine glands which they produce. You know them. So remember that the hormones are important for normal growth, for fertility, for reproduction, and also sometimes the quantity is so less, they are in not even in micro ml, the concentration in the whole body, but they really control you, and they are also useful for the acute conditions to maintain the body. It can be insulin, it can be adrenaline, required. Right? I'm standing. Insulin changes, and what about the importance of growth hormone, especially for a child at that pre-pubertal stage? It is so important, and these so-called endocrine, how the disruptors can play a huge role, a negative role, and especially if you are exposing a child to these kind of things. Next slide, sir. So these are some of the endocrine disruptors. A lot of names are given. Pesticides are always there in that, and this by
bisphenol.
Bisphenol is one of the notorious things which you always find in the plastics everywhere, including in this. If you heat it, it will only release more. And don't keep it too long also. So let's carry it back if there is water in that so that we use it. The next slide, sir. So the endocrine disruptors are nothing but the chemicals, they disrupt the system. See? And there are 85,000 of human-made chemicals in the world. Out of them, 1,000 or more are definitely endocrine disruptors. Next slide, sir. So the following are among the most common and well-studied endocrine chemicals that are widely used in the practice in so many ways. We are using them. I am not naming them. You can see them, and they are available in so many forms. In everything. It can be a toy that the child plays. It can be something that you smell, something you eat, you drink. You are mixing it somewhere every day. It's not once in a week, you do it every time. Next slide. So these are again some of them. Next slide. So how do people encounter endocrine disrupting chemicals? That's what I was telling. You always see them in every part that you use. It can be cosmetics that you apply to your skin. It can be other chemicals that are always added in the diet. What about the air? The air pollutants, you are always there, and the one that you apply to the skin, and then the water that you drink many times. So even the point that you need to know is even the low dose is unsafe. The body's normal endocrine functioning involves very small changes in hormone levels, and yet we know even these small changes cause significant developmental biological effects. So that is what is important, is even if they affect in a very minor way, the results can be devastating to the person, and especially if the person is younger. And remember, we have a huge young population in this country. Next. Yes, sir. I thought I won't disturb this. Yeah. So we can bypass this slide, sir.
Yeah.
This is an international organization which worked on that. So we always know about bisphenol. It's a chemical produced in large quantities. It's used primarily in all plastics. It's found in various products that you use, not only the one that human touch, even otherwise. What about in the eyewear, the glasses that you wear, the water bottle that I already mentioned, in the cans that we use, processed food, and the bottle caps, they have more of it. And without touching anything, the water pipes that deliver water to you can have it. And next slide, sir. So the primary source, what is the primary source of exposure of this bisphenol is important. We know that it can happen in the diet, dust, atmosphere, the water, the drinks that you have, everywhere can lead to, it will somehow invade your body. It is by some means it will invade you unless you are extra cautious, unless we are more sensitive to it, or the governments are sensitive, we do something about it. Otherwise, it's going to be a difficult task. Next slide. So how do we prevent this exposure? Can we play some role at least to start with is what is important. So many animal studies have shown that parents and caregivers can make a personal choice to reduce the exposure to the infants. We can do that to our children. See that what kind of toys are they safe? What kind, are you giving them bottles right from the time? What kind of bottle it is? Does it have too much of bisphenol? Are you using a metal one which could be perhaps better? In so many ways. And then you need to look at the other things, and especially using microwave. When you're you're heating it microwave, are you using a plastic container to put your food, which will definitely liberate a lot of bisphenol in that. So it's better to avoid any kind of plastic, and we always do it. We use a lot of plastic. It's easy, push it into the oven. Next 30 seconds, your coffee is ready in a plastic thing, but a lot of bisphenol in that will go in. So you need to use a metal anyway. You can't use in the oven, so you can use a different one, which is not plastic. You know about them. The porcelain, it can be porcelain or some other items. So remember about the plastic that we are using, and then better to use less canned food, because unfortunately I know that we don't use so much of canned food, but when you are eating out, it can be canned food. We already learned about processed food, which is very bad for everybody's health, and we are consuming endlessly the processed food. And so these are all important things. And one thing about pesticides, the most important thing, I think that's where the role of organic foods comes into play. We use pesticide extensively. In a developing country like India uses it even more extensive because our farmers are poor. They want to produce more grains or more pulses and use them indiscreetly. Our governments may not be very efficient. Even if you have a rule, it may not be properly governed. Governing is not proper. So people can use it in the rural areas, in so many places, all kinds of pesticides. Even some of those pesticides which are forbidden in the developed world are still being used in India. You know that. And they are used rampantly. It is not only risky for the people who consume, it's also risky for the people who are using, spreading it, spraying it left and right without using proper kind of preventive measures. Next slide, sir. Yeah. So we are either directly exposed to the pesticide due to occupational reasons, many occupational people, and the people who are spraying it, they are directly exposed. It's even more dangerous. Sometimes we even see patients who come to us with acute poisoning. Not that they swallowed it, but the amount of thing that they inhale, they can cause. But indirect exposure is more common to the vast majority of the people, and we see them very often, and it's a huge burden today. Next slide. Now, these kind of things happen. Fortunately, this guy using it properly, using a nasal one and keeping it at a distance. But wind is important. Sometimes it just throws onto your body. It can cause skin irritation, it goes into the lungs, and this is what the unsafe practices because of so many reasons. Poverty, insufficient education, and the role of the NGOs is very important here. The role of all of us is also very important, that where we can educate people how we can try to understand the implications and the dangerous effects of this. Next slide, sir. So policymakers are important. Unfortunately, we are not so sensitive. We are looking at so many aspects in our life. We are just thinking of our daily life. We are not looking at the people who are at the bottom of the pyramid. So there are so many things. For them, the priority is different. The people living at the bottom of the pyramid, they just want to eat something, gulp something, go to the work, or find something they eat on the road. I always say people who eat street food are at high risk. You know who are they? Most of them may be lower middle class poor people. Diabetes is on rise amongst this population. People living in the urban slums, people in the even in the so-called rural areas, which are no more really rural. Every rural area is slowly getting urbanized. So that is where you see unhealthy fat, as sir was also mentioning, maybe a lot of usage of unhealthy fats, especially trans fat, is extensively used, and which is bad, which is sometimes much worse than the carbohydrate. So we need to be aware of those things. And next slide, sir. So we need to make sure that we use less pesticides, make it safe, and how to do it. So many things we need to do. Next slide. So I just wanted to be very short and before I am warned to stop, I thought I will finish it. But being a medical professional, I always went a little offhand and told you a few things. So when you are advising the diet, remember to listen to the patient or the person. Sometimes now the international organizations have started using some more sensitive words. You don't call somebody diabetic. You don't call a diabetic patient. People with diabetes, person with diabetes. Trying to be more understanding that diabetes is so common, as already mentioned. 10 crore people have frank diabetes, and so many more are just waiting in the queue to develop diabetes. So it's important for us to listen to the patient. As you said, sir, the ancient food, somebody eats South Indian, what kind of food are they eating, we need to find out and see how we change. And it's also important when we are talking about glycemic index, what they are mixing in that, it really becomes a low GI food. Also, it becomes a food with low glycemic load. Today, one of the patients was telling me, when I eat rice, white rice I eat, sir, but my sugars are not high because I add so much of vegetables, all green vegetables, leafy vegetables. So as I told, she's wiser. She has not studied nutrition, she has not studied medicine. But she was telling me, because she checked the blood sugars. Nowadays, the continuous glucose monitorings are available, many other devices are available, patients are experimenting. They tell you which increases their blood glucose, which doesn't increase. But as a healthcare professionals, as all of you are, you look at everything. The blood, not just the blood glucose, not the HbA1c, you're looking at their lipids. You're also trying to improve their lifestyle. Don't restrict them too much. Even as a physician, I don't try to scare them and restrict them with too many things, because I know they have a lot of priorities. I incidentally take care of type 1 diabetic children who belong to lower strata. We provide them insulin and other things. What I understood was, I am always worried about the type 1 child, sugars going up and down. I don't know what will happen to the child after 5 years. Then when I went on telling so many things to a poor lady, she told me, sir, I have another 2 children to take care of. I am doing what best I can do. So these are the practical things that happen in this country. So sometimes we have to be more sensitive, understand, learn, and all of you have to grow in your profession, and people should appreciate you, people should love you. When people appreciate and love you, our profession becomes more interesting. That's why I'm here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take a break because I think we had a slightly longer session, so we'll just have some, I'll just check out and have some coffee, please.
Could you eat some lunch? Could you eat some lunch?
It was very good to ask for.
Yeah. So,
मौसम आते मौसम जाते दिन हो या रातें।
ये माँ भी अजीब होती है ना, कितनी भी देर से सोए सुबह टिफिन पकड़ा ही देती है।
चाशनी से मीठी लागे फिक्र तेरी रे।
खाने के टॉपिक पे इसका पूरा मैथ्स बिगड़ जाता है।
खट्टी मीठी सी जिद में प्यार सा लगा छौक है दुलार का।
एक और कौर करके एक और पराठा निपट जाता है।
प्यार के धागे से ही बांधे खुशियाँ बस बांटे।
माँ की नजरें हमेशा हमारी दाल की कटोरी पर टिकी रहती हैं।
स्वाद वाले हर एक सुर में जिक्र तेरा रे।
के बीच हमेशा आधी रोटी छिपी मिलती है।
तेरे हुनर की है बात क्या, तेरा प्यार पाने की जात सा।
दूध में बादाम नहीं, बादाम में दूध घोलती है।
इसे मैं पीऊं या खाऊं? चुप करके पी।
फोन पर हेलो से पहले खाना खाया क्या पूछती है। माँ का एक ही मंत्रा होता है, कैसे भी हेल्दी खाना प्लेट से पेट तक पहुँचाना है।
मावानी मावा ठंडिया छावा बिन मंगे पावा वे। मावानी मावा ठंडिया छावा बिन मंगे पावा वे। मावानी मावा ठंडिया छावा बिन मंगे पावा वे।
हमारा और हमारे हजारों किसानों का भी एक ही मंत्रा है, कैसे भी हेल्दी खाना खेत से माँ की प्लेट तक पहुँचाना है, बाकी माँ देख लेगी। हम हैं 24 मंत्रा ऑर्गेनिक, इंडिया की 10 लाख माँ की ऑर्गेनिक चॉइस।
मौसम आते मौसम जाते, दिन हो या रातें।
ये माँ भी अजीब होती है ना, कितनी भी देर से सोए सुबह टिफिन पकड़ा ही देती है।
चाशनी से मीठी लागे फिक्र तेरी रे।
खाने के टॉपिक पे इसका पूरा मैथ्स बिगड़ जाता है।
खट्टी मीठी सी जिद में प्यार सा लगा छौक है दुलार का।
एक और कौर करके एक और पराठा निपट जाता है।
प्यार के धागे से ही बांधे खुशियाँ बस बांटे।
माँ की नजरें हमेशा हमारी दाल की कटोरी पर टिकी रहती हैं।
स्वाद वाले हर एक सुर में जिक्र तेरा रे।
2 रोटियों के बीच हमेशा आधी रोटी छिपी मिलती है।
तेरे हुनर की है बात क्या, तेरा प्यार पाने की जात सा।
दूध में बादाम नहीं, बादाम में दूध घोलती है।
इसे मैं पीऊं या खाऊं? चुप करके पी।
फोन पर हेलो से पहले खाना खाया क्या पूछती है। माँ का एक ही मंत्रा होता है, कैसे भी हेल्दी खाना प्लेट से पेट तक पहुँचाना है।
मावानी मावा ठंडिया छावा बिन मंगे पावा वे। मावानी मावा ठंडिया छावा बिन मंगे पावा वे। मावानी मावा ठंडिया छावा बिन मंगे पावा वे।
हमारा और हमारे हजारों किसानों का भी एक ही मंत्रा है, कैसे भी हेल्दी खाना खेत से माँ की प्लेट तक पहुँचाना है, बाकी माँ देख लेगी। हम हैं 24 मंत्रा ऑर्गेनिक, इंडिया की 10 लाख माँ की ऑर्गेनिक चॉइस।
मौसम आते मौसम जाते, दिन हो या रातें।
ये माँ भी अजीब होती है ना, कितनी भी देर से सोए सुबह टिफिन पकड़ा ही देती है।
चाशनी से मीठी लागे फिक्र तेरी रे।
खाने के टॉपिक पे इसका पूरा मैथ्स बिगड़ जाता है।
खट्टी मीठी सी जिद में प्यार सा लगा छौक है दुलार का।
एक और कौर करके एक और पराठा निपट जाता है।
प्यार के धागे से ही बांधे खुशियाँ बस बांटे।
माँ की नजरें हमेशा हमारी दाल की कटोरी पर टिकी रहती हैं।
स्वाद वाले हर एक सुर में जिक्र तेरा रे।
दो रोटियों के बीच हमेशा आधी रोटी छिपी मिलती है।
तेरे हुनर की है बात क्या, तेरा प्यार पाने की जात सा।
दूध में बादाम नहीं, बादाम में दूध घोलती है।
इसे मैं पीऊं या खाऊं? चुप करके पी।
फोन पर हेलो से पहले खाना खाया क्या पूछती है। माँ का एक ही मंत्रा होता है, कैसे भी हेल्दी खाना प्लेट से पेट तक पहुँचाना है।
मावानी मावा ठंडिया छावा बिन मंगे पावावे। मावानी मावा ठंडिया छावा बिन मंगे पावावे। मावानी मावा ठंडिया छावा बिन मंगे पावावे।
हमारा और हमारे हजारों किसानों का भी एक ही मंत्रा है, कैसे भी हेल्दी खाना।
Millets as well. So I see very good improvements with my clients using millets. I have so many questions to ask you. Thank you for giving me.
Okay.
Hello everyone, I'm Mayuri Avla. I'm a freelance consultant nutritionist and a holistic nutritionist too. With an overall of 12 years of experience after working with multiple health clinics, practicing my freelancing from past 7 years. I'm very happy to be part of this discussion, and also I'm a certified sports nutritionist and also a pediatric nutritionist. Hello everyone, my name is Sudha Kothuri. I'm a freelancer consultant nutritionist. I'm so glad to be a part of this particular conference. I have learned so many things. I came here to learn from many of the experienced people. So I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for this opportunity.
Good evening all of you. Myself Dr. Moderator, and I'm doing fellowship under Vasant sir in internal medicine, and it was a wonderful session for me.
I'm Shanta Kumari from SVS Medical College, Magoga. I'm doing as a HOD and chief dietitian from last 15 years. I have written a book on diabetes also. I learned so many things today, and especially I am very thankful to Janaki Srinath today. I am giving the opportunity.
Hello everyone, I am Dania Irfan, and I do an online consultation and look into women's health and hormonal balances. My graduation I have done from Mumbai University, and I have come here settled in Hyderabad for the past 23 years. And practice has been freelancing earlier. Now I'm doing my online clinic consultations from home itself. And it's really a privilege to be a part. I'm a holistic nutrition coach and associated with Holistic Nutrition Works. And looking into the 3-step process. One is history taking, second is habit formation, and the last one is hand holding the process through a 3-month program, which helps in the reversal of lifestyle disorders. And it was a great and insightful session today, and I've learned a lot of things. Thank you all of you, all panelists, a lot for enlightening us through this process. Thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jyoti Chardia. I'm a PhD in nutrition, and I've done my hotel management. I'm from Mumbai. Came to Hyderabad because of marriage, so I've been here for the past 30 years. I've been working for 36 years. And I'm also happy to share that I have been part of 24 Mantra. I have done videos for them. And I've got my own nutraceutical firm by a brand called Nutriline, which I made myself using only vegetables to help, in various lifestyle diseases and various other things. So coming here has been quite an honor because for me, I have learned so much, and life is a journey about learning, so it never stops. And thank you for having me here. And yes.
So, hello everyone. everybody. I'm Anupha. I'm actually from Calcutta. Just past 2 years I have relocated to Hyderabad. I am working with Ankura Hospital. Before I was a freelancer, but because of my husband's job transfer I had to come here. Now I'm the HOD of Ankura Hospital, so I'm really happy about my journey. I have helped a lot of women with their preconception and their problems with PCOD. And during the pregnancy, I've worked with a lot of gynecologists in Calcutta and doing the same out here also. Thank you so much for having me here. It was a really, really enlightening program. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Janaki. I'm a nutritionist and a wellness consultant. So I'm not only a nutritionist and wellness consultant, just to add, I have been a food scientist, so I think I will remain one.
Yeah, she's
my background is I've done my BTech in food technology from Osmania University, and then I've gotten my master's and PhD in nutrition. So in the process of moving from food science to nutrition, as Janaki ma'am was earlier elaborating about how it's a challenge to combine these two aspects. Considering how challenging it was while learning and how easy it makes my life today, because I understand when people talk about all kinds of blanket statements like all kinds of processing is bad for food, nobody should eat processed food and all. The food scientist in me tries to fight back. At the same time, the nutritionist in me also wants to help people draw the line of what is useful, beneficial, necessary processing and what goes beyond that and where you should stop. So thank you Janaki ma'am for inviting, and thank you 24 Mantra Organic for conducting this and helping us all, enlightening us, and thanks a lot for panel members for enlightening us so far, and we are looking forward to learning more and more from you all.
Thank you.
A little bit.
So Q&A then.
Yeah.
But you just.
A bit from you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. I think thanks for Dr. Janaki and Namrata for organizing this session. It is not only learning for our guests but also for us internally. Because I think in our journey, we started our journey 20 years back. I think the trigger points were one is how do we improve farmers' lives, because I come from a farming family. The second thing was how do we make food purer, because I think we come from a philosophy that one is food is curative if you eat the right things in the right proportion. Second is food also has to be enjoyed, because life is short and good food leads to good conversations and good conversations lead to good relationships. So these are the two foundational principles. So I think we started, one is to help small farmers, second is provide pure food, and third is also do little bit for our environment. So I think the first 20 years of our journey has been more about removing the cross negatives which you talked about, endocrine disruptors, whether it's pesticides or any other, because and I think Kumar and his team and everyone has worked so much that today we are able to give more shelf life than conventional products without any additives, absolutely, whether synthetic or otherwise. So I think that's been removing the gross negatives, and then the positives have been a little more incidental. But what we have also discovered is how do we make food enjoyable? Because I think this last 30-40 years we have been so much focused on let's say food production, that we have forgotten that food is also about taste, food is also about nutrition, etc. Like I think Dr. Malleshi was mentioned, people don't, breeders, they're not so much bothered about amylose, but how do they increase the food production? So I think we have in our journey discovered that a lot of those old varieties are actually very good both in terms of nutrition and also in terms of the eating experience, whether it's taste, flavor, etc. So we have gone to great lengths. Universities have stopped multiplying these seeds. We have gone to great lengths to identify retired breeders, request them to leave some seed, multiply the seed back and then give it back to farmers again. So I think that's been the first part of our journey. Last 2 years we have been looking at saying that how can we do more. I think that's led us to saying that we should perhaps work on wellness food. We have removed the negatives, but we have to also talk about the positives. So we have been working on this low GI food, rice particularly, last 4 years. What we have seen is a lot of fluctuation. Then we realized that it depends. One is of course the variety, then second is the purity of the seed. And third, we have also realized the expression of low GI gene is dependent on where you grow, when you grow and how you grow. So I think last 4 years we have taken that to perfect. So now we had actually bought a lot of material, but then we realized that it was not giving consistent results. We never sold. We sold as normal rice. But now I think we are pretty confident, and then so we are scaling it up and then doing that. Similarly, we are working on low GI atta. Then we have started working on high oleic peanuts, so that where the polyunsaturated fatty acids have better kind of ratio. We started a project on another, I think, issue is mycotoxins in food. So peanut is a big issue where I think there are a lot of aflatoxin. We have initiated a program of aflatoxin peanuts. So hopefully in the next couple of years we should be able to give guidelines.
Storage.
Then we have also started a project on how do we improve arsenic in rice is a big issue with intensive cultivation. So we have started working on that project. How do we ensure that arsenic may not be free, but at least make sure that it is under the limits. So I think a lot of these challenges we have taken up, and then so this low GI thing is one kind of thing which has come up. So today I think thanks to all of you, Dr. Sesikeran, Dr. Vasant, Kumar and Dr. Malleshi, I'm sure I think all of us have been more wiser than what we were at the beginning of the session. There are a lot of finer aspects I learned. In fact, yesterday I was in Pune with a company who have done wonderful work on fenugreek, and they have done 200 patents on that. And then, so we are trying to work with them, see how we can improve the quality of food by using that. So it's been a huge learning experience, and thank all of you for taking out your valuable time and then sharing this with all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, as I said, sir, yours is an inspiring journey. Many of us have a lot of ideas, but putting that into action and ensuring that it grows into an organization is a big achievement, and I'm sure it will go a long way in providing clean food to the consumers. So to begin with the panel discussion, I will have only few questions just to initiate, and then we'll open for the discussion. Sir, for Dr. Vasant Kumar sir, sir, could you elaborate on what are the factors affecting glycemic response beyond just the glycemic load or glycemic response of a particular food grain, like from a human design perspective or from a human...
You might say affecting the sugar values? Or
yeah, affecting the glycemic response.
Yes,
like,
yes.
So because each person varies in the glycemic response. So could you highlight on us?
One important point mentioned by boss is the taste of the food. Finally, unless you make it desirable, tasty, the patient would not take it. Is it not? I mean, acceptance itself is low. And then coming back to the other aspects, whether it's the glycemic variability or looking at the lipid.
No, so it is, sorry to disturb you. I am talking from the medical point of view.
That's what, yes.
Beyond the food or this one, there are other aspects which our nutritionists would be interested, because...
I think that point has been generally mentioned. What is important is you are looking at glycemic index. Glycemic load is very equally important. We always talk about GI. We can't forget GI, glycemic load, and then we can't forget about what other things are there in that food. You're looking at the fat. Is it a healthy fat? Is there enough fiber? This is all important, is it not? I'll just give you an example. There are some ice creams, low sugar ice creams, they'll have very low GI index, but very unhealthy. Is it not? So that is where we need to be wiser. Also tell it to the patient. So
and
you
also
have to,
the,
yeah.
because now that the continuous blood sugar monitoring has been come, we see that there are, each one of us have varied glycemic response as such. Even for, because so doctors are now trying to do the CGMS so that at least many youngsters are not even considering the doctors. They themselves, it has become such a fad now.
I know.
Just they go and do the CGMS.
But Janaki, the point there is, one
so
is
how
the,
much
yes,
you
yeah.
would you advise? Like this is all already there, you know. But beyond that,
See,
do you think really there is so much of variability in us that it is beyond the impact of the food?
See, we have to give the true importance to the food, not beyond that also. It may not terribly change.
Okay.
Depends on the glycemic index, glycemic load, that's important as far as the variability is concerned. Why the physicians are worried? Because the kind of drugs that we use, the insulin we use, the action, how the peak of action, that is where it bothers. Whether there is too much of glycemic variability, sugars going up, coming down, as Dr. Sesikeran mentioned, patients sometimes getting into hypo. So that is where the importance of using CGM. Apart from that, the diet also, the patient himself realizes or herself realizes what you said, whether it correlates to the actual variation in the blood sugar.
We are always challenged, sir, because when sometimes because of the cost and the complexity, we may not advise on our own for a patient to check on the continuous blood sugar monitoring.
I agree
But they
with you.
themselves will come, okay, because ultimately we know it is a behavior change and optimal diet that works, or optimal physical activity. But many patients insist on that. That's the reason I have asked.
So incidentally, it's meant for research work most of the times. As sir was also saying, whenever they are doing a drug study, they want to see how the drug is acting on the blood glucose. But it is certainly not advisable to most of the patients. If somebody is just listen to them, but don't encourage anybody to unnecessarily get into CGM business.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, Sesikeran, sir. Now, if you look at India, has vast majority of diabetes, and nowadays as the obesity is increasing and the physical inactivity also is rampant, the age at which people are getting diabetic is coming down, I mean, drastically, and it is very painful to see many pregnant women and men to be in a gestational diabetic state, because last 20 years I've been handling only gestational diabetes, restricted weight gain in pregnancy, and it takes so much of effort from the entire family to ensure that on one hand the focus is always on blood sugar control. Are we losing focus on the optimal nutrition support to the body?
You're talking about nutrition support to the
Everybody says, no, I just gave us an example, but often in this focus is on control, and how do we balance, like how much role, I mean, how much focus we should also give to nutrient supply at the same time?
Actually, if you see the various National Family Health Surveys which are being done every 3 to 4 years, it looks as though the critical level of intervention is in the adolescent girl. Because the adolescent girl's nutrition decides the subsequent intrauterine growth of the fetus, and that decides the body composition of the particular fetus, which ultimately decides about how quickly that particular child is going to grow up to become a fatty person or a muscular person, and thereby the risk of developing diabetes or not developing diabetes. So there, at every stage we have problem. The entire population, there is at every level there is a problem. But we find that most of the reason for the thing is in the adolescent girl. If you don't nourish the adolescent girl, she's going to get married, she's going to conceive, but she's still not properly prepared for that carrying the baby. And then the whole cycle goes on. And ultimately, let's say it's a girl child, and that girl child will be low birth weight, will be underweight, will be stunted, anemic, etc., and by the time you realize she's again married, and the intergenerational cycle
it is
keeps
so
going.
difficult, sir, having handled you do whatever it takes to reduce weight, okay, and the moment the conception happens, it is such a challenging thing for the nutritionist to control the hormones and at the same time provide optimal nutrition for the mother and for the baby. Like, you know, it is very, very, I mean, like, it takes a whole lot of household and a lot of counseling sessions to bring about, because there suddenly the nutrient intake becomes such an important, because, okay, the mother might have been able to manage her weight, but nobody's, I mean, the micronutrient status has to be pre-evaluated even before the conception happens. But sadly,
even lean mothers can develop gestational diabetes if their body composition is less muscle and more fat.
So how do we?
So that's again say the whole thing is becoming as a genetic programming, which later on leads to that. Best part of it is to make sure that the girls get not only nutrition food, but they're also made physically active so that their muscle mass, lean body mass gets better. If they have a better muscle mass and the body composition is better, when they do become pregnant, the chances of developing gestational diabetes will be very low.
So the biggest challenge there is that the moment these adolescent girls, they become adolescent, their whole idea about food changes.
Yes.
That's the biggest challenge, and that time, you know, the teenage rebel that they become, they don't want to listen to their parents. It's the social media that is influencing them so much that you know, it becomes really difficult. Like you said, that adolescent is the time where we should be giving them the right nutrition, asking them to do their exercise. But at that time, it's at the onset of the puberty, where they are having so much of hormonal changes, and you know, they suddenly become the rebels. Like they were eating the home cooked food all this time. Suddenly they want to go out with their friends, they want to enjoy their life. They're like, oh please, I don't want tiffin from home, I want to have canteen food. So the counseling has to be for the parents, I think, more at an early stage.
So I think coming back to that point, sir, finally you need to look at the childhood obesity. Childhood pattern is very pre-adolescence itself is important. Some of them might behave properly. And another important point that sir mentioned is pre-gestational stage is very important. If not very late, at least you are not too late.
6 months, yeah.
Whether you call it premarital counseling or subsequent counseling is very important, especially if somebody has a family history and somebody has an overweight pattern. Need not be obese, as sir mentioned, because our Indians, we are, you know what we are called? We are called thin fat individuals. We are very thin, but we have a lot of fat. So to do that, that might help.
Yeah, one thing, one interesting factor which I want to handle. The next question is for you.
So, doctors and most of our dietitians, do you suggest us to develop a special nutrition supplement to adolescent girls? And if so,
government program.
ICDS, sir.
Some Kishori, something Yojana is there.
That's exactly what I've tried to do.
Okay.
But it's not, but just 1 minute, I just want to focus on this.
Okay.
Just for your one question is bothering me, sir. If you look at the popular media and other this one, many times millets or these grains, we'll ask them to soak for several hours. You know, that is the norm now being practiced. So, how, from a food scientist, I want to know, what is the impact of soaking for so many hours, especially millets, and making in the form of, I mean, because we are not clear whether soaking, whether it, you know, soaking whole grain has a different impact, soaking processed grains has a different impact. So when people in the media are just saying soak for 6 to 8 hours and then make porridge out of it, you know, what is your take on what's going to happen to these millet grains, generally cereal grains, and the glycemic response?
Yeah, normally they advise millet rice, for example, foxtail rice, XYZ, to soak in water for some time. The reason for that probably is during soaking, the physical changes, the moment water penetrates and the cells start hydrating, something solubles will try to come out, and something from outside will try to penetrate inside. So there will be a kind of nutritional changes also occurs. So if you don't throw that water out, we are not discarding the solubles. And in addition to that, normally these millets, as most of us know, have this complex structure, grains. So they take more time to cook. To get the central core to be cooked and ready to edible thing, if it hydrates earlier, then cooking time also comes down.
So cooking time comes out, but nowadays we use a pressure cooker to cook that soaked grains we are using. In the olden days, yes, I agree, they never had a pressure cooker. So the millets were soaked, okay, and then cooked with open boiling, open vessel boiling.
Right.
But now in the modern context, if you see, we are cooking a millet grain which is already processed and soaking for 6 to 8 hours, and then I get it and cook in my pressure cooker. What is going to happen?
No, actually, if it is over milled, for example, rice you can have 6% or 12% milling. All that white rice is around 10 to 12%. So that one, by soaking, we are not really improving the cooking characteristics. Whereas if it has got bran layer still, the so-called aileron layer, which contains good amount of fat and micronutrients. So by soaking them, some of them may penetrate into the endosperm and improve the nutrition to some extent, and also reduce the cooking time. Otherwise, there is not much investigations done in that direction.
That's exactly I am telling, because routinely in the social media, everywhere we are promoting these kind of success stories in eating on to the extent of blood sugar, and which is being very much populated. So I really feel, I mean, this aspect needs to be. There is definitely from a glycemic response. Sir, you are only you are focusing on. I think we all should focus on glycemic response, because sir is more focusing on the cooking characteristics, cooking
and
time,
consumption, and also nutrition. He mentioned about
nutrition also.
But what if the carbohydrate is soaked for so many hours and then further pressure cooked? Definitely the digestibility.
The complex carbohydrates will become more soluble
hydrated
and more
and more
go up.
True.
So that's what, but in the popular media, that is what people are suggesting, especially for many grains and particularly so many other millets. So which is a big concern.
Yes, madam.
I believe one of the reason is
But one
is for phytates, I think.
But see, phytates is one thing, sir, and also another way of looking at this issue is, will this much of soaking and the changes which are happening in the grain carbohydrate structure, will it help the gut microbiota? Is that angle which is going to help the glycemic response? Because, I mean, both the ways, how it is working? I mean,
during soaking,
because will that help the, I mean, maybe, the carbohydrate chains to hydrate, and will the bacteria find it easier to grow?
Possible.
So that it is beneficial to the glycemic response?
Because
these are two contradictory.
Right.
Yes, sir, two happening parallelly.
Anything which is more digestible will not reach the gut bacteria. Anything which is less digestible will reach the gut bacteria. If you improve digestibility, you are not going to get a prebiotic response.
But if the whole process, say, it releases a little bit of the bound soluble fibers, the soluble fiber may be bound to the insoluble fiber.
So if there is, but that's
that
nothing.
happens, that
For example, you take fenugreek like fenugreek is a good example. If you soak and use it, what sort of soluble fiber gets generated?
Correct.
So the glucomannan present in that comes into the soluble part, that goes into the gut bacteria. So, but if it's for cereal grains, I don't think there is any.
But then that is what is being promoted, no, sir, nowadays.
For the millets especially.
Millets especially, and many people do that very religiously. That's what is my problem.
That's more to what Dr. Malleshi is saying, more about the cooking time and all that. Because everybody, even with our brown rice, we get those issues.
Yes.
Madam, I think one of the reasons is because, the whole demonizing of pressure cooker part, nobody wants to use pressure cooker. Whoever is following like this popular social media, they're like, I don't want to use pressure cooker. I don't know, it kills my nutrients. In those cases, they want to really, if given an opportunity, they might cook on open fire. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, then otherwise we should say if you are soaking, it is better to cook in the open vessel.
I want to
at
ask one more
5:30.
question.
Yes, sir.
Mentioning
I'm in a
about,
meeting actually. I'll do it at
Ganji
5:30.
which forms
Yeah.
in
Thank
open
you, thank
cooking.
you. Right.
Should you discard it or use it?
No, we should not discard it. That's what earlier we were using it in some or the other form.
No, discard in the sense we
No,
used to
but,
give the cats.
because it is nothing but it is an edible part of the grain actually.
No, in terms of glycemic response.
Glycemic response, it will be high. It will be high. It will be high.
high,
It is
sir.
soluble,
Soluble,
soluble
sugars.
amylose, so and low molecular. Then only it comes out.
So you discard it.
Yeah. In fact, doctor, we have insoluble amylose and soluble amylose again. The soluble amylose normally oozes out when you are going for the open cooking, and that too in the old rice it is less because it binds with others. Okay, but madam, soaking, her point is valid actually. See, the soluble fiber which is covering the cell wall, for example, probably they may loosen and it will enhance the cooking time and it may become little more soluble fiber instead of insoluble
Yeah,
fiber.
that's what we
So
were
that
telling.
needs
That's
to
what
be
we were-
investigated.
That
It needs to be investigated,
investigated.
There
right?
is, I think,
Yeah.
there are a lot of research areas, especially when it comes to millets, that still needs,
Yeah.
you
To
know,
be- yeah.
And I think it's time, I mean, once again,
I
I'm
know.
telling this opportunity, it's time, sir, please tell us that how each millet is so different from one another. Please kindly highlight that point.
He has
and
spoken
then
so much about
stop using the word millet and, you know, give respect to each
Okay.
individual
No,
grain.
quickly I will tell. Sorghum is jowar.
And
Then
that we know,
bajra.
sir. That
No, I'm just telling.
carbohydrate
No. Precisely, the sorghum grain has a unique amylose, pectin. You know, the hard portion of the sorghum, vitreous portion and floury portion in the grain. The vitreous portion where the starch granules are highly compact. So because of that highly compact, its swelling takes, even if you cook for more time, sorghum will never fisher out like rice.
Never. We have
Okay.
one very nice recipe.
Precisely, gugri we call it. So similarly, when you go to bajra, pearl millet, it has a very large proportion of germ and it's a protein-rich material compared to all other millets. In addition to that, it has good amount of polyphenols also. And phytochemicals, that anthocyanins and other kinds of things. So when you come to ragi, it's very interesting. The seed coat is very, very tough, but the endosperm is very soft. So if you want to polish, it becomes powder. Yeah, exactly. So you can't polish ragi. Only that thin layer you can and blow up. But the endosperm is fragile. If you crush it, immediately it becomes powder. You never get soji in case. So similarly, when you come to other small millets like Navane, Sami, XYZ, they are like paddy, basically. Okay, and the seed coat is not edible and we remove that husk. Then the bran layer is there, and the bran is normally multi-layer, it's not a single layer. Especially in kodo millet, it is 7-layered. That's why kodo millet is unique among other millets, true. So all these factors influence the cooking and eating quality and micronutrients contains. Right.
So because of this germinated brown rice.
So, madam, germinated brown rice, there is, it is not very easy in the Indian context. In Japan, when they go for dehulling the paddy, they do not scratch the aileron layer or the brown layer. So, the moment you scratch it little bit, you soak it, fungus will start coming. Okay, in Japan, they have the machinery so sophisticated, it doesn't touch the bran layer. So, in Indian context, if you go for rubber roll sheller, not the centrifugal sheller, it's a mill. So, there should not be any damage to the outer surface. The moment there is little damage, fungus will start inside. So, it is not very easy, but if you can germinate paddy, then you parboil it, bake it hard, then mill it, then you can get germinated. But in Indian context, it will be difficult only, right? Yeah. But certainly it is beneficial and helpful. Yeah. As far as GABA is concerned. Right.
Sir wanted to say something? You wanted to make a comment?
I think on this millets, this whole millets issue has got reduced to your foxtail millet, all these things.
Yeah, small millets.
That perhaps constitutes 1% of availability of all food.
True,
Otherwise, what
true,
is really available on a large scale is ragi, jowar and bajra.
Yes, sir.
And this is also very expensive for a common person. The small millets.
Foxtail, yeah.
So I guess that's why the focus has to be more on those three major.
Yeah,
millets.
sorghum, bajra and
See
ragi.
how we make good use of them.
Okay, okay.
It's an important point.
Yes, yes, please.
So you were telling me roti is much better than grain.
As far as digestibility is
Yeah,
concerned, right?
So, but when I see the blood sugar levels post consuming jowar roti or ragi roti, though they are taking it along with dal and curry, their blood sugars are higher when compared to eating khichdi is made up of kodu
We'll be in
millet
touch.
or
Sometime we should have some small.
why does that happen?
I think
No,
it's time
idli you are comparing with roti.
Khichdi I am comparing.
Similar?
Khichdi with
Khichdi.
foxtail millet, kodo millet.
Yeah. So the roti from foxtail millet, kodo millet and ragi.
Or jowar.
Jowar, ragi. So the GI of roti from jowar and ragi is higher compared to the other millets. That's what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Probably the amount of cell wall material in the minor millets is slightly higher compared to the other grains. If you take the starch content of minor millets and sorghum and bajra, it is little higher starch content. So that starch, when you add boiling water to that and make roll and bake it, probably gelatinization may be happening, and that may be because this GI is not controlled by only by carbohydrate. So many other factors come into picture. No, the polyphenols present in the food, protein present in the food, dietary fiber present in the food. So all those, for example, if you take ragi, the GI is not low, honestly, as you know. But the advantages of other nutrient present in ragi, for example, polyphenols has lot of health benefits. Yeah, especially your cataract postponement happens. Number two, angiotensin, what they call the complexing of the protein, just like HbA1c, what you are referring now. So that is also polyphenols influence
So
it.
you mean to say polyphenol content of a grain is high, then the glycemic and glucose response will be low.
It will be low, supposed to be low.
Because I see good results.
And how you cook, no? If you cook ragi in the grain form, certainly it is low GI. But we make ambli or roti or even mudde. See, and mudde you swallow it, you don't chew in the mouth. So saliva is not added. Directly it goes into the stomach and gets churned. So all these factors influence the digestibility, carbon digestibility.
How about the combination of millets, sir?
Combined millet.
Combination of 2-3 millets.
Madam, there are a lot of controversies. They see, for example, if you take Dr. Kader, he says eat one millet one day. Don't merge them together and eat. It really has some sense because ultimately the starch has to be swollen when you cook it. The dietary fiber content and the granular thing is different from different millets. The gelatinization temperature, for example, if you take barley and wheat, it is low. Whereas millets, different millets have different gelatinization temperature. So it's better to eat separately than combining
But when
it.
I experimented with quinoa, foxtail millet and brown rice, so same proportions. So it is directly reducing the sugar level.
Quinoa or combined food, you mean?
Combined millets.
Possible because one food may be little digestible, the other one is suppressing the digestibility. And in case of quinoa, no, the protein content is much higher compared to the other things. The higher the protein, lower the GI, probably.
That was an experiment, sir.
Correct.
It worked very well.
Possible.
My last question, sir, if a grain is, when you are saying a grain is less digestible or when we are reducing the digestibility of a grain, does it impact the nutrient content absorption of the grain?
It does. Because about to tell you, talking about high polyphenols, it inhibits iron and micronutrient absorption. See, everything has got a plus side and a minus side. Okay? So we have to have a balance of both. And micronutrient rich foods, if you combine with polyphenol rich foods, will inhibit micronutrient absorption.
Correct.
So the meal has to be divided in such a way that you don't allow these two to come.
And
Actually,
that
because with metformin usage, that metformin usually it blocks the digestion of certain carbohydrates, and people taking metformin are seeing B12 deficiencies as well. So that was seen. So will the same scenario happen with grains as well? If they are being less digestible, then micronutrients.
It will. Then what happens is that is when we need to have supplements. Because if people who are that, they suddenly realize that they are anemic. Okay, and then you have to use supplements to manage that while keeping this intake in a particular manageable way.
no, one more, excuse me. Before that, doctor will again explain to you. See, the gut microflora is also influenced by the diet. Polyphenol content, if it is there, especially in the stomach. The duodenal ulcer incidence is very, very low. People who consume millets, it has been established by Dr. Tovey in Mysore. No, in Mission Hospital there is a ward known as Dr. Tovey ward. 25 years he was a gastroenterologist doctor. So he surveyed the people consuming duodenal ulcer were rice eaters, not the millet eaters.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Helicobacter pylori, which is cause that is suppressed by finger millet polyphenols. It's grown or it is thrown away. So that plus or minus, as doctor says, no, gut microflora is also very important, and now doctor says gut microflora will tell how healthy you are. Even oral microflora. So these are complex issues.
Response to increasing the shelf life.
Which one, madam?
Heating and cooling process.
Response.
Is that the only retrogradation process increasing the shelf life of it, or any other process?
No. See, when you are heating, starch gelatinizes. When you are cooking, it contrasts. So that physical, but it is not very easy. You cannot practice it every day. That heating, cooling cycle and all.
And the micronutrient quality.
Micronutrients remain micronutrients. Where they will go unless during soaking, if you throw out,
So only bioavailability matters.
Matters there,
Micronutrient
yeah.
content of
it will not change.
We will know by analysis.
Right.
Okay. The only question is how much of that gets absorbed.
Yes.
That in turn will depend upon what we are eating along with it.
Right.
So let us say, like he was telling that with tamarind and other things actually are better.
Yeah, acidic.
But tamarind will inhibit iron absorption. So lemon is good because lemon promotes iron absorption.
Right.
So it's actually, eating is actually a very complex process.
The nutritionist job is so complex that we have to spend so much time.
Right.
So traditional practices seems to have understood all this, and that is how we are again going back to that.
But that's what I said, sir, right in the beginning, right? Any common person, let's say, just reads, and a lot of people now try to become experts on the internet. Anyone will get confused because there are so many
concepts, so many theories, and so many aspects concerning the diet of a person. So it has to be one uniform concept. It has to be tailor-made. It has to be individualized depending upon their metabolic profile, depending upon their already existing likes and dislikes, and practical feasibility. So there is no one solution.
So you have personalized nutrition, precision nutrition now, isn't it? So that you look at the genetic, metabolic, everything, and then make a tailor-made diet response. But then it's very difficult to.
And as Sir said, eating is an experience. Until unless a person doing all the things, if the person is unsatisfied or not satisfied with the diet, then in the long run, I think it should be done. It should be done like slow and steady so that it doesn't disturb the existing pattern. Because people are just shifting from this and that overnight.
Experimenting with a lot of.
One day it will be keto diet, next day it will be like millet diet. Another week they'll be on some other diet.
Gluten-free, lactose-free,
so
vegan,
it is.
so many.
Yeah,
you see, for example, now sweet shops have got
sugar-free
sweets, but then the energy content and the other the maida content of that sweet is still high. And that itself will create a glycemic response. So, but then there's also a risk that they overindulge in it because it has no sugar.
Right.
And the net result is you make it worse. You rather tell the person if you want to eat a sweet, eat it, just reduce the quantity
Yeah.
and eat it after a meal, because after a
True.
heavy meal, a little bit of sweet will not do any harm.
Exactly.
You won't have a GR, right, a GR response.
People are having a lot of awareness and a lot of information these days, sir, but they are not ready to change their lifestyles. That is where we wellness centers are exist.
Behavioral change is very difficult.
Yeah, and a lot of this information is coming from so much of unwarranted, unscience. I mean, like, while we trust the traditional systems and knowledge, but at the same time, every solution need not be suitable in the modern context. So, I mean, we have values and we also have some negatives.
Their lifestyle is different, ma'am.
And the physical activity is different. The number of items a person eats is totally different.
And as you said, context is important. Everybody, like, especially because of the whole shorts culture, nobody wants to pay attention for more than 60 seconds. How much context can we give in 60 seconds? For everything, if you, I think the only right answer for any scientific question is it depends. So, we cannot really give a right answer, wrong answer, and then people in front of us also don't have enough patience to hear about the context.
True. There were many clients, actually, because my experience has been more than 25 years. So initially when we began our journey as this one, there was less knowledge. Like, I mean, this many avenues were not there. So we had this satisfaction of doing a thorough job, because they were looking out for these kind of scientific information, and okay, so 1 hour was sufficient for us. But over the time, they already come with different perspectives, and the trust with which they come to us has gone down a lot. Okay, the trust has gone down, and with multiple stakeholders, multiple specialities coming in, it is actually a lot of problematic for the consumer to decide or make a decision as to what is good for themselves, even though they are actually spending more time, more amount of money on investing or trying to eat healthy food. Sadly, unfortunately, they are not able to get the correct results or the satisfaction. You know, that is where I wanted a platform like this to, like, where you get the information, I mean, onto the same platform. We need medical specialists, we need food technologists, and we need the nutritionists to be together, and also the good food companies which value scientific information, because ultimately that matters, because people are left and right, you know, they say it's millets and people are buying, you know, unfortunately, I mean, they invest so much money on that. So, and if they get disappointed, the problem is they would never come back to again trying this particular food. I mean, because it has not given them result. It leaves a negative impression on the consumer. That is where it's a big challenge on all of us.
Google knowledge is really creating problem to doctors also.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm Rajmohan. I have nothing to do. I'm not a nutritionist, just a doctor of organic food, along with this brand, with permission of Bala and Raj. I have 2-3 questions to all of you. First is, you're a very informed, scientific, methodical thought. You imagine that I am a normal human being who has a normal set of problems, a normal set of anxieties. How do you explain low GI to me? What is GI? I don't even know it. So how will you uncomplicate? It's an open-ended question to all of you. Forget the panelists, they're all evolved people, they're in a position in their life where people listen to them. You're practitioners. I come to you. All you explain low GI to me. I don't understand granulation.
Right.
I don't understand. I don't want to understand. You have one situation like that. The other situation is, my internet doctor has told me I've read up everything.
Correct.
If you're patient, I will come and give you printouts.
In fact, this could be a challenge all our nutritionists would be
So I think
facing.
this is
How
a-
to address, how to talk to people that this
How do
is
you
actually-
explain? Sir, have you eaten sufficient ragi mudde any day?
I've eaten.
Then have you eaten equal amount of rice? When you feel more hungry within short time,
That experiences I have.
that is a glycemic index.
No, I'm saying when you talk about low GI,
Huh, huh, huh.
I'm talking from a communication perspective.
Fullness and yeah,
How to explain in a
What is
simple
low
form.
GI?
yeah.
Can you tell me what low GI is?
Slow digesting food.
So basically, if after
Slow
a meal,
digesting.
it makes you feel energetic, or if after a meal you're feeling sluggish, that gives you an answer of what kind of food that you're eating is right for you. That is one aspect of understanding, the food. Like if you are eating a plate full of white rice, okay, you will start feeling hungry earlier than if you would eat the same amount of say chapati or a millet, right? So that itself gives you an answer that it's not the exactly right kind of food for you.
By all that rationale, you're coming in telling me this is low GI rice. I'm asking you what is low GI?
No, any food which increases your body's sugar to an extent that your body cannot manage is
High GI.
Any other food which raises the blood sugar, which your body is still able to manage, is low GI.
That is
Yes,
a very plausible
correct.
statement. The second question I have to all the nutritionists, you said life is becoming difficult, there are so many questions that are being asked. Today I believe Alia Bhatt's nutrition plan more than anyone else.
Obviously. Because she's practicing.
So I'm saying, I'm looking at it, wearing your hat, that your foundation is so strong, there is an opportunity for you to actually become opinion makers and perhaps influencers with a scientific foundation. We don't hear too many of those voices.
Yes.
We are actually doing in the Advertising Standards Council of India, we have strict influencer regulations. When we hear an influencer put up something on that and we find that it is not, we haul up the influencer and then we tell the influencer what actually is the truth and what they should say. And most influencers have changed their thing and then either pull down their ads or they have modified it later on. So some amount of counter this thing is going on, but you know how it takes time. There is a mechanism to manage the influencer nowadays.
So because one of the things that as an industry that we face is the onslaught of opinions. Right? So we can't sit in arbitration of which opinion is better. We can only counter it by saying this is what we know. So there is an issue of possibly an ecosystem of stakeholders coming together and saying this is the foundation of scientific knowledge, which can be then created and narrated in a manner that we understand.
Yeah, we are doing that actually. We are publishing a book called Dietary Guidelines for Indians. We regularly do it every 10 to 15 years. This year, this time it took us a long time because among our committee members itself, we were arguing like this and for every sentence which was going into the guideline. The book is now ready. It's with the Union Health Ministry, waiting to be released. Their ministry is asking us, make sure there's nothing controversial because the election is coming.
Yes.
So that's where science enters politics. So that should come. That will clearly give you these answers. At least most of them here. Based on scientific evidence. Every bit of the sentence is backed by an existing state-of-the-art evidence, which could change over time. That's a different issue. Today, this is the truth. So based on this truth, this is what we suggest. So that is meant for common people in common language.
So the presentation that you made was extremely informative and scientific. I'm thinking to myself, is there a way that can be written for the common person?
Can be written.
Now you don't find food labeled as diabetic food. You say diabetic friendly food. Diabetic food, you cannot label any food now.
Yeah, we have corrected most of that. Right. They have said this is diabetic
friendly food,
especially this low sugar
business.
We have stopped most of them.
I'm going to try doing this now that you've put in sowing the seed. In layman's language, if that's what you do, then one of us has to take the call and start actually documenting it for something that's more.
Well, that's what Good Food Manthan is all about. This is
Yeah,
the
that,
job, right?
see, that's what is a platform now to provide. Maybe next time you'll have more consumers also joining. I mean, we can also, maybe, here we are presuming the consumer, because the consumer has to listen to the medical doctor, the consumer has to listen to the, the nutritionist, and the consumer has to bear the cost and the repercussions, and he has to live his life. So often nutritionists should not bear, or nutritionists or food companies or other stakeholders, in the name of giving them benefit, should not really disturb them unnecessarily or add to the cost of the burden which already the consumers are facing. And we should ensure that we keep up the faith on the immense faith kept on the nutritionist, the scientist, the medical field, and the company, the trust on the company to give them good food, valuable food, because ultimately it is becoming a part of the consumer. So we all need to be remembering that, because I see like every one of us, because the science is evolving, the technology is evolving, the agriculture scientist looks at a different challenge. See, his objective might be different. And that will be the big objective when he is trying to grow more food or increase the farmer's income. Okay, his objective is right. Okay, and from the medical perspective, their objective will be right. From a food technologist perspective, their objective will be right. But all the impact is on the consumer.
So that's exactly why we are there. Because we are the interface.
The interface.
Right? So we want basically that, as I said, the right type of information to go to a consumer, backed by the right food. Right? So yes, we are a commercial company, but 20 years we've been trying to help the farmers on better livelihood, and obviously try to give right food to the consumers. So this initiative is essentially, people who, like you, who can influence the consumer, who can communicate better with the consumer. The idea is for the company to work collaboratively, so that, again, all of us, our objective is the consumer should benefit at the end of the day. So that's why we initiated this, and like Dr. Janaki said, this is like, for us, it's like a baby step. So hopefully we will conceptualize something where we'll have a larger consumer audience as well. So, we can have live kind of questions, and we'll get to know a little bit better in terms of what sort of challenges and how do we address them. Okay, so that is the idea, but today was really, actually what happens is, because a lot of you would be approached by multiple brands, big companies in India, and I worked for big companies as well for many years. Many of them not necessarily doing or delivering what they promise. So you may have a lot of questions and distrust. So one of the things we are trying to do is also for you to not have the distrust, at least with us. Because our objective is not a short-term thing. It's been there for many, many years. So what we are trying to do is do and promise and deliver what we promise, what we are writing and talking about. So somebody like Dr. Malleshi helps us with certain things, because again, he is the expert on that. And we make sure that our processes with Kumar and team, we don't deviate at all, right? And of course, for us, the larger thing is, end consumer benefits. Therefore, the farmers, we can go back and say, grow more GI rice right way. We pay them more, so they are happy to grow better quality rice, and so on. So we build that ecosystem within, whatever way we can. That's what we are trying to do as well. So happy to, again, have everyone here. And the participation has been, I told Namrata, let's keep a cohesive group so that we all...
They were all selected based on their experience and their effort to stand on their feet.
So, no, it's all, with so many experts, it's always a bit of a nervous thing, right now. So because we are the least knowledgeable in the group, so better to have that sort of thing. Yeah, true. But it's.
I would like to mention a point with regard to the question which you had for the endocrinologist. that the glycemic response from the point of view of the endocrine system, right? So what I feel is, as a practicing holistic nutrition coach, I look into all areas of life. And what I believe in is that the kind of mood that you're taking in, whether you're stressed, whether you're happy, whether you're, anxious, guilty, fear, all that comprises a lot on the endocrine system. And that is what is, influencing the kind of absorption, the gut microbiome, everything. So the overall food mood connection, what we say is that is what needs to be, looked upon and understood as to which area of life is impacting your food intake.
Obviously, the point taken very well. Like definitely, when we are stressed out or even eating too fast, there is a reactive hyperglycemia.
True.
So all these are finer points of it. When I was asking sir, the question was like the same meal can have different glycemic response depending upon the body constitution and metabolic situation. That's what because when that's what I'm telling you. A nutritionist only looks at from a nutrition point of view. But in reality, there are so many other factors which are happening, as well as the mood. I do agree, the mood and even how much mastication or how fast you eat. Suppose you have eaten your meal too fast and check your blood sugar, definitely it will be very low after some time and then bounces back later. It will be like,
Yeah, so I feel it's like the endocrine system is our mother. And the central nervous system is like a father.
Obviously that is there. Obviously that is there. I mean, as the science evolves, that's what, I mean, personally if you look at the curriculum has to evolve over the time. We were like coming from a BSc background, then evolving into MSc, then doing PhD, then learning the nuances of practice. It is taking a lot of time. So my work also will be towards working for the uniform curriculum of qualified nutritionist. It is still pending with the health ministry. So that has to come in like...
I would suggest some subjects as of holistic nutrition.
No, even, yes, more, everything needs to be there and a specialized nutritionist should be there. And it is possible to learn so much of food science, so much of physiology and anatomy and psychology only when you have a well-evolved curriculum which is sufficient to study in 4 years. Otherwise, it is not possible. Like, it is not possible.
Whatever food we are taking, it is fully contaminated. There are lots of disorders. Even if we take papaya also, it is tasteless. So what can I do?
So I do agree that on this pesticide, I do agree that pesticides are being indiscriminately used. The reason why we have high level of pesticide is because of poor agricultural practices. Under good agricultural practices and integrated pesticide management, if you see, scientifically we calculate how much should be sprayed of which pesticide. I mean the legally approved one, not the banned ones we are telling. How often it should be sprayed, and then based on that we calculate how much residue is left on 100 grams of a particular substance, how much a person will consume, that amount of pesticide going into it, how close it is to the level at which it causes harm. We actually feed rats 100 to 1,000 times more pesticide than that, and when we know at a particular level an adverse thing is happening in the animal, the approved level will be at least 100 times below the level at which a harm takes place. Which means if a pesticide which is approved by the Pesticide Regulatory Board in the country is used according to the practice, it will not cause harm. The reason why you're having, for example, a farmer has got a brinjal field, okay? Brinjal is got very, the worm will
susceptible, right.
So what happens is the prescription is you put one spray at one particular stage, another spray at one more stage. That's all you should do. But this fellow, if he sees one worm, he'll start spraying the whole field. Again he sees another worm, again he will spray. So that is the kind of practice which takes place, which is poor agriculture practice. So we cannot actually blame the pesticide. And you should also remember that more than 60% of the food which we produce could get lost to pest. And we will go in for inadequate food if we want to have a pesticide-free one. So there has to be a balance between both. So we cannot say that all pesticides are harmful. The government as well as the FAO and WHO jointly do meticulous science to come to that level. Can I use this much or no, anything not beyond? So that is proper. But everywhere the problem is when the rules are broken, you get into trouble. For example, as if we don't have traffic rules. We have, right? It's the same. At every field in life, there's the same thing. If you follow the rules, you are safe. If you don't follow, you'll get into harm.
Correct.
And you can't blame the process for that.
System for
So just another point, one is the pesticide which Dr. spoke about. So what we do different, to answer your question, so always in nature there's a sort of a compromise between looks and taste, right? So most of the, like first time I went to Europe, we had beautiful looking apples, but we couldn't eat beyond one bite, but tasteless. Right? Very, very, like a toy, like really nice and so on. So what we do here is really not, apart from organic, we also, like earlier Raj just mentioned, we look at a particular variety, area, soil and everything. So you get the right taste. And so when you say papaya or some other fruit, there's always a bit of a compromise to get more yield or this or that, right? So what we try to do is balance all that so that the taste is finally not compromised. So when people say what's so great about 24 mantra, somebody is using our rice, they will not, when they switch the rice, they will know the difference.
Yes.
The quality, the flavor.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, it's like, I can't show you, oh, this rice is better than that rice, but when you start eating regularly, after a few months, when you switch any of our products, you will know the difference because the taste will not be the same.
Today also, like we talked about the gut microbiome, we also have the soil microbiome. And
Yes.
our whole effort is how do we improve the organic soil carbon content. If we do that, then the soil microbiome really kind of multiplies, and then there's a very synergistic effect. They draw nutrition from the plant and give back the minerals and extract and give back the things. So it's a very life system. So when we do too much ploughing, or when we keep applying all these fertilizers, the whole ecosystem is destroyed. And that's why you have to pump in. So like earlier, let's say a farmer was using, like doctor said, indiscriminate use. Earlier they were using some 3 bags of fertilizer. Today to get the same yield, they have to use 6 to 7 bags. One is of course the profitability goes for a toss. Second, you are destroying the soil and soil biome. And today, like indiscriminate use of pesticide, primarily because there is monoculture. You grow paddy after paddy or one crop, same crops. You go to Punjab, it's paddy and wheat. And the pest load increases so much that earlier, like they used to manage some 10 or 50. I used to earlier work in the pesticide industry. When I started my career in '88, there was no pesticide used on home. And when I quit in 2000, there are in a 60-day crop 3 rounds of pesticide used. And then green gram doesn't attract much pests, unlike let's say rice or other crops. So I think it's a huge issue of multiple things happening at a time.
Right.
And of course, if people do it rightly, then it's not an issue. And of course, can't also blame the farmer because small farmers, you have 2 acre, 3 acre. And as a consumer, we have 0 tolerance. You see one insect, then you will not buy anything.
Yes.
So the poor farmer is so scared, the trader will give him very low price or something, he will keep on spraying.
Not only pesticides, they are using some carbon for ripening of fruits.
That's the next
Yeah,
level,
yeah.
especially
True.
in papaya.
And the fumigation, as doctors and our MD says, there is, people are changing also. See, earlier methyl bromide was being used, that is removed. Aluminum phosphide has come, and even people don't want to use aluminum phosphide, carbon dioxide cocooning has come now. Just put carbon dioxide and keep it for some time, all the insects will die. So without any pesticides, you can get the good self-stable products like.
I would like to thank each one of you on behalf of Shrestha 24 Organics. It's really has been a wonderful convergence of all faculty relating to food, nutrition, health, and I can say it was a real good food Manthan today.
Okay.
Thank you very much for being here, being a part of this very interesting discussion that we had even after the session. Speakers have done their bit. And I would request our panelists to, we'd like to share a happiness hamper with them. So, Dr. Sesikeran.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
So thank you for your time.
I am part of you, madam. There is no need for that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
you can
sir.
turn towards the camera.
Yeah.
We are directed by the camera.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sir.
Good. And we should conduct such meetings in different places also, sir, because the nutritionist will
plan, sir.
exactly. Yeah. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Much more because
Right.
this is very important.
Yeah.
Being on the same platform, understanding from everyone's perspective.
That's again one more challenge for the dietitians. Doctors, if they prescribe a medicine, their dose is almost set according to the weight and everything. For dietitians, there is no set standard. So
RDA is there, only you have to tailor make that, and the food is not a medicine, it's a food, so.
but we are already eating it as a medicine so that we can get its benefits.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
No, wonderful. I mean, we just discussed a few weeks back and
Yes.
we're able to come to this point is fantastic. All because of her efforts and
for your time.
I don't know if I can ask this question, ma'am. You were telling me about RDA, right? So do you think really RDA
others will wait for 10 minutes and the panelists leave. Will just spend 10 minutes.
Yes, wait.
We were asking for an article.
Yes, sir, I'll take your number and be in touch with you for scientific doubts, basically, because carbohydrate is such a challenging molecule. So.
It's challenging.
Yeah.
Different kinds of carbohydrates. It's not a
Yeah,
unique
it's an ocean, sir. Now with
There is a bulletin called the PFNDA, Protein Foods Nutrition Bulletin, which comes.
now we
You
should
can subscribe
start
it free.
carbohydrate.
Every month I write a column called Food for Thought or Thought for Food. In that, these kind of topics I usually cover in that. Every month
I get it regularly. Dr. Pai.
Dr. Pai.
Now
The last 1 year I've been writing.
Yeah.
So he usually tells me this what's the kind of doubts people get and based on that.
So you have already, whatever you written, compilation will be there.
Then all the bulletins will be available. You can just write to them, PFNDA, they will mail it all to email. There are other good articles also.
Sure.
Because you can also write about
Correct,
that.
Yeah, and also be a
And
part
in our academic, it should be one more chapter we should write about these 24. Now, in that pen I write.
The industry runs that. It's not government. Okay.
Yep.
They have a one snack.
But we can have with everybody also, no? Come, doctor.
Janaki.
So just 10 minutes, please. Yeah.
We would also like one picture with them.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, of course, that's what I said. No, they won't. He's just finishing that. Then okay, we'll move out. They want to take a picture.
Even you can be with us, please.
Come, please.
Please come, you guys, all of you, please come.
Closer.
Come.
Yes, please.
Oh, somebody can come ahead.
Short.
It's all right, they're all fine.
I think come on, yeah.
Have your mind.
It's mine. It's mine. Excuse me, can you take one more, please?
No problem. Please come.
John.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
You would like to join for
You can have my slides if you want.
To follow.
Each has to have the slides if you want to go back and read that.
I would like you all to join us for
That one PFNDA.
Haiti. Haiti on terrace.
Send me reminder. Because sometimes
join for Haiti and then come back. Actually, I'm here with my students.
खेत से माँ की प्लेट तक पहुँचाना है, बाकी माँ देख लेगी। हम हैं 24 मंत्रा ऑर्गेनिक, इंडिया की 10 लाख माँ की ऑर्गेनिक चॉइस।
मौसम आते मौसम जाते, दिन हो या रातें।
ये माँ भी अजीब होती है ना, कितनी भी देर से सोए सुबह टिफिन पकड़ा ही देती है।
चाशनी से मीठी लागे फिक्र तेरी रे।
खाने के टॉपिक पे इसका पूरा मैथ्स बिगड़ जाता है।
खट्टी मीठी सी जिद में प्यार सा लगा छौक है दुलार का।
एक और कौर करके एक और पराठा निपट जाता है।
प्यार के धागे से ही बांधे खुशियाँ बस बांटे।
माँ की नजरें हमेशा हमारी दाल की कटोरी पर टिकी रहती हैं।
स्वाद वाले हर एक सुर में जिक्र तेरा रे।
2 रोटियों के बीच हमेशा आधी रोटी छिपी मिलती है।
तेरे हुनर की है बात क्या, तेरा प्यार पाने की जात सा।
दूध में बादाम नहीं, बादाम में दूध घोलती है।
इसे मैं पीऊं या खाऊं? चुप करके पी।
फोन पर हेलो से पहले खाना खाया क्या पूछती है। माँ का एक ही मंत्रा होता है, कैसे भी हेल्दी खाना प्लेट से पेट तक पहुँचाना है।
मावानी मावा ठंडिया छावा बिन मंगे पावा वे। मावानी मावा ठंडिया छावा बिन मंगे पावा वे। मावानी मावा ठंडिया छावा बिन मंगे पावा वे।
हमारा और हमारे हजारों किसानों का भी एक ही मंत्रा है, कैसे भी हेल्दी खाना खेत से माँ की प्लेट तक पहुँचाना है, बाकी माँ देख लेगी। हम हैं 24 मंत्रा ऑर्गेनिक, इंडिया की 10 लाख माओ की ऑर्गेनिक चॉइस।
मौसम आते मौसम जाते, दिन हो या रातें।
ये माँ भी अजीब होती है ना, कितनी भी देर से सोए सुबह टिफिन पकड़ा ही देती है।
चाशनी से मीठी लागे फिक्र तेरी रे।
खाने के टॉपिक पे इसका पूरा मैथ्स बिगड़ जाता है।
खट्टी मीठी सी जिद में प्यार सा लगा छौक है दुलार का।
एक और कौर करके एक और पराठा निपट जाता है।
प्यार के धागे से ही बांधे खुशियाँ